Alright, here we are doing another run of Baldur's Gate 3 on Honor Mode. My gimmick this time is I want to do an all-gal team, no boys allowed. So I'm picking Karlach as my avatar, because she is by far the most annoying to get access to of the three girls. Also, I just really like Karlach. There is more to this challenge than just a trio girl power run, but I will get to that when it becomes relevant. As an origin character, there isn't a whole lot I can change about Karlach in character creation, so just zooming through that. Karlach wakes up on the flying squid ship feeling a little squid-like herself. Guess this is as good a time as any to escape the hells. As she progresses through the alien rooms, she finds a surgery table with a half-skull man inside. Naturally, she uses her incredible medical skills to rip the brain out of what remains of the skull, only for it to sprout legs and proclaim it is now her best friend. Cute. Proceeding down the path, she is accosted by some weird-looking alien lady with silver armor and a big sword. After some tingly sensations, they become fast friends, and celebrate their new friendship by slaughtering a few nearby imps. Karlach notices a lady in a pod nearby crying for help. Not one to pass up someone in need, she uses her barbarian strength to rip the door right off the hinges and free her. Shadowheart, grateful, offers to join up and use her magic to help them escape. The trio plus Brain Monster enter the helm only to see a battle unfolding between some hellspawn and mind flayers. The goal is to reach the transponder at the end of the room and use it to teleport them out of the hells, but no harm in trying to farm a little XP in the process. Shadowheart opens up with the command drop, and it works. Commander Zalk has officially dropped his weapon. lae'zel hops around collecting some glowing purple containers and equips Zalk's sword that she obtained using magic fingers. Karlach and lae'zel attempt to hit Zalk, and Shadowheart and us fight some newly summoned monsters near the transponder. The battle with Zalk is not proceeding very quickly, as neither Karlach nor lae'zel can reliably land a hit. Suddenly, two more Cambions roll in through the back door. This is a very good time to bail, so lae'zel and Karlach get out of there and leave behind some purple presents. Shadowheart throws a firebolt at one of them and kaboom! The Mind Flayer gets totally wrecked, but Zalk and the Cambions are basically unharmed, devils and their fire resistance. Feeling satisfied with the 75 XP from the Mind Flayer, Karlach uses the transponder to get them the hell out of the hells. The ship goes crashing into a beach on the Sword Coast, and somehow, Karlach and team survive the wreck. Karlach awakens on the beach and realizes she's finally back in Faerun. Nearby, she finds the unconscious body of Shadowheart, who she immediately tries to awaken. Shadowheart is more than happy to team up with Karlach to solve their alien parasite problem together, so they set out. Seeing a couple of intellect devourers in the shipwreckage, something tells them that maybe fighting these guys would be easier with a friend, so they jump up the cliff instead. Karlach sees a waypoint sigil going crazy, and as she approaches, a gross hand pops out and starts talking. Karlach uses all her barbarian strength to yank on the arm until a man pops out. He tries to act suave and join their camp, but Karlach is not having any of his shtick, and politely tells him to take a hike. Karlach runs into a couple of tieflings who have captured a sour-faced green lady who looks kind of familiar. Realizing this is lae'zel from the Nautiloid, Karlach convinces the tieflings to get out of here before they get hurt, then uses 3 whole arrows to break lae'zel's cage. Now that the team is reassembled, they wander over to the nearby ruins and find a group of looters. Karlach, ever the fan of weaponizing her frightening appearance to get what she wants, intimidates them into fleeing. Intrigued by whatever it was these looters were after down here, the team go knock on the door to see what's inside. After convincing the guard to open the door for them, Karlach busts in and surprises the guy. Easily dispatching the doorman, they try to sneak up on the girl patrolling the next room, but this goes horribly. Immediately, she runs off and warns her companions, bringing a full adventuring party with mostly balanced rolls to join her. Shadowheart goes down before she can use her firebolt. Karlach manages to get her back up, and lae'zel kills Torga, but then Karlach goes down as well. And lae'zel is a little too close to the explosive barrel when Shadowheart finally does the thing. So now it's just Shadowheart with 1 HP against the remaining 3 baddies. She uses Healing Word to get Karlach back up, then tries to retreat out of the room. It doesn't take long for her to get shot in the back though. By some miracle, Karlach dodges an ice knife and uses a potion. Now she has to survive an entire round of 3 guys against her. The bloodthirsty adventurers decide to finish off Shadowheart and lae'zel instead of knocking out Karlach though. Big mistake. Once Karlach gets another turn, she uses Rage and eats an attack of opportunity in order to dash away. The rage damage resistance keeps her alive, and she runs for the door as fast as she can. After managing to get away, she sneaks back in and uses Revivify scrolls to bring Shadowheart and lae'zel back a safe distance from the enemies. They then take a short break to go to camp and rest up. The battle isn't over yet. Running into the room to confront the enemies, Karlach goes into a rage and starts attacking Hasid the Barbarian. Shadowheart drops a bless on the whole team, then runs into a safe corner. lae'zel joins the battle against Hasid and gives him a couple smacks, finishing him off. lae'zel does some chopping and knocks Sifri around, and then Shadowheart commands Barton to grovel for a turn. Now, Sifri is easy pickings, and after she goes down, it's our 3 girls against just one poor rogue. The battle is finally won. Once inside the inner sanctum, Karlach decides to investigate a suspicious sarcophagus, though she instinctively knows to do so in turn-based mode with the rest of the team a safe distance away. After opening it up, she grabs the key and a spear, and everyone sprints out of the room, which quickly turns into a fire pit worse than Avernus. Shadowheart got a new spear though. It even comes with the ever-useful effect True Strike. Finding a group of long-dead corpses in the next room, the team makes an effort to take all the weapons off of them immediately, just in case. Then, Karlach finds a nice shiny button nearby and presses it, causing all of the skeletons to wake up. Good thing they took those weapons. The battle is fairly uneventful, just some smacking with Karlach, some buffing with Shadowheart, and some slashing with lae'zel. Easy peasy. Upon defeating the last skeleton, Karlach goes into the room that was open when she hit the button and opens another suspicious sarcophagus. This time, a talkative undead creature comes out and asks her some philosophical questions. Satisfied with her answer, he promises to visit her later. I guess it's a date, Bone Daddy. It is now that we come to the real meat of my challenge and what I'm actually going to be doing here. This is actually going to be a monoclass challenge with some caveats. All 3 of the girls are going to be running Circle of the Moon Druid for this run. In addition, I decided to limit myself further by making the girls each specialize in a specific wild shape form at any given time. The rules are, after I choose a wild shape form for a girl, that is the only form that character may use until level up, at which point I may choose a new one. I allow this because the initial roster of wild shapes is pretty weak, and I wanted to create some variety over the course of the game. So, as new forms are unlocked, I will allow the girls to choose new forms to specialize into, but only one at a time, and obviously no overlaps. Now who is choosing which form to start? Obviously, I can't help but make Barbarian Karlach. She fits bear form to a T. Shadowheart works with Spider quite nicely. The control aspects fit her party role well, and the aesthetic works for a servant of a dark goddess. That leaves lae'zel, who is getting the scraps at this point. I considered Wolf, but I figured there would be some role-playing conflict there if she did that. Shadowheart is deathly afraid of wolves, so having a wolf in the party doesn't play nicely with her. And cat form is not combat viable, so that leaves Badger, which is what lae'zel is stuck with until something better comes along. In their spell selections, I also tried to consider their personalities and establish party rules. In this run, as the leader, Karlach is going to have to be party face, though she will be relying on Intimidate an awful lot. For that reason, I gave Karlach slightly higher Charisma, Thaumaturgy, which gives advantage on Intimidate checks, and some more generic utility spells like Speak with Animals and Longstrider. lae'zel is a striker, so I gave her mostly offensive spells like Thunderwave and Ice Knife. Then Shadowheart is support, so she got the more control-y spells to keep enemies controlled and the team buffed. She is also on guidance duty. Newly kitted out as Moon Druids, the team heads over to the nearby Druid Grove to pay their respects. However, some goblins show up at the same time and it turns into a massive brawl. Opening up the battle, Karlach turns into a bear. She gives a little tap to a nearby goblin and rips his head clean off. lae'zel and Shadowheart transform into their forms and rush in closer to the battle. The boss targets lae'zel first. I guess he has a thing against badgers. Karlach smacks another goblin down with her bear arms, but doesn't quite finish the job. Now, Shadowheart gets to show off her skills, and she does an impressive bite on the bugbear, then webs up the big group of enemies. The boss hits lae'zel once so hard that she falls out of badger form, so when her turn rolls back around, she has to transform again. Then, she attempts to burrow on a nearby archer. It knocks him prone, but does no damage. Duly noted. Will finishes that goblin off. After a while, only the warg is left. lae'zel can't land a hit, but everybody else deals some good damage. Finally, Karlach comes in and bashes it down. With the battle won, and no casualties on the allied side, everybody hits level 3. They raid the bodies of the goblins and head inside the grove. Karlach talks Zevlor down from a fight with Eredin using her tiefling wisdom. With both parties calming down, Eredin walks off into the grove and Zevlor informs Karlach about the druid plan to shut down the grove. Since Karlach and the others are druids themselves, they aren't particularly fazed by this, but the tieflings are in danger. Karlach can't leave these tieflings to fend for themselves, so she agrees to talk to the first druid. Level 3 provides some level 2 spells. The most notable picks here are Heat Metal and Moonbeam for lae'zel, and Enhance Ability for Shadowheart. Karlach takes Spike Growth for now. The team decide to go test their new abilities out on top of a nearby hill, though as they reach the top, they find a helpless tiefling girl being accosted by a bugbear assassin. The bugbear didn't expect to see 3 druids come out of nowhere, so he is quickly dispatched before he can act. Heading down into the grove, Karlach sees some tiefling siblings arguing about whether to stay or to go. Once again invoking her tiefling wisdom, she convinces them to stay and protect their kin. Karlach starts exploring the druid grove, talking to everybody in sight. She helps a tiefling pickpocket get away, saves a goblin from getting shot in her cage, and helps a tiefling with his combat technique. While wandering around, Karlach runs into Will, who threatens her. He isn't listening to reason. It seems the team will have to deal with this issue at a later time. As Karlach continues her visit of the Druid Grove, she meets a flamboyant writer, gives a bear a fish, learns to play the lute, saves a girl from a snake, and finally finds a healer. The healer doesn't seem too keen on healing them of their tadpole problem, especially since that stick in her hand is poisonous, but she tells them that maybe First Druid Halsin can help. Karlach finally visits the tiefling kids in their hideout and meets their leader, Maul, who asks for a druid idol in the center of the grove. After chatting up a few more people, Karlach heads out into the world to see what else she can find. Late that night, Will shows up at camp to confront Karlach. It doesn't take much to convince him that he's barking up the wrong tree. The tadpole handles most of the heavy lifting, but Karlach has had enough of him, so she tells him to get lost as well. As Karlach explores the wilderness, she climbs up a cliff face and at the top is suddenly accosted by a smarmy guy in a fancy outfit. She immediately recognizes this guy as a devil and wants nothing to do with whatever he's selling. Karlach knows better than to parley with devils. The crew found some goblins harassing an injured druid in a cave under the grove, so they cleared them out and rescued the druid. After crossing a bridge, the team tries to enter a nearby village, but they are immediately threatened by a team of goblin ambushers. But Karlach is a pro at intimidation, and these goblins don't want to mess with her. She also encounters a group of goblins harassing a poor gnome in a windmill, once again striking fear into the hearts of these weak-willed goblins. They run off, and she rescues the gnome, who offers his backpack as payment. Karlach discovers something very important in the village, a piece of infernal iron. Taking it back to the Druid Grove, she gives it to a tiefling blacksmith named Damon. He has experience working with infernal machinery and offered to tune up Karlach's infernal heart. So with this infernal metal, now Karlach is a little safer from suddenly burning out. Going back to the village, Karlach and team fought some skeletons in a cellar. It was a pretty close call as they got overwhelmed by undead, but the team managed to come out on top. After the battle, they find a spooky book under lock and key. With no obvious way to open it, and some really unsettling vibes, they stow it away for now and move on. Karlach leaves the village heading west and finds a checkpoint with some goblins. She scares them into letting her by unmolested and hears about a party going on nearby. Arriving at a Selûnite temple crawling with goblins, suddenly the team are overwhelmed with psionic energy and fall to their knees. That's when Shadowheart pulls out her giant D20 and somehow fights back the attack. Unprompted, she decides now is a good time to reveal that she worships an evil goddess of secrets and darkness. Alright then, thanks for the heads up I guess. The goblins didn't seem too bothered to see a group of tough-looking ladies walking around, though one of them seemed offended by their presence and demanded fealty.
Go on, kiss more foot.
Karlach reluctantly obliges to kiss the foot, though she takes the opportunity to steal his sweet ring in the process, impressing her companions greatly with her tongue dexterity. It is around this time that the team reaches level 4, which is a pretty significant milestone, because at level 4, they finally get their first feat. As of patch 8, wild shape forms count for the Tavern Brawler bonus, meaning they add their strength bonus twice over to accuracy and damage. So, for a group of wild-shaping ladies, it probably goes without saying that all 3 of them are taking Tavern Brawler. Also at level 4, there are 2 new wild-shape forms, Deep Rothe and Dire Raven. Karlach sticks with Bear for now, and Shadowheart sticks with Spider, but lae'zel really needs something more useful than Badger, so she changes to Dire Raven for the excellent mobility and debuffing potential. Feeling strong after gaining an overpowered feat, the team decides to test their new abilities. Karlach happens to know about a group of devil servants masquerading as paladins, so she decides now is a good time to teach them what happens when devils mess with her. She was going to pick up Cyril here and toss her off the ledge, but I was too tempted to see what happens when you talk to these guys as Avatar Karlach. Perhaps, unsurprisingly, they immediately aggro. So now it's battle time, caught slightly with my pants down. But the power of Tavern Brawler meant this fight went surprisingly painlessly. No casualties, easy win. Even scary Anders, who can usually deal a boatload of damage with Divine Smite, missed one of his attacks and never managed to take anybody down. Empowered, the team go back to the grove and investigate a suspicious beach nearby, only to find a harpy nest. Once again, they completely dominate the harpies, with nobody ever being in real danger. Hearing about some weirdness in a well under the blighted village, they go down and see a bunch of spiders, including Big Mama Spider. This time, things are much more dangerous, as the spider matriarch is not to be trifled with. The girls fall out of wild shape a couple times, and Karlach barely comes out of the fight standing, but in the end, they manage to take the big spider down. Seeing a giant hole in the ground, the team uses a scroll of Featherfall and jump in to see what could be going on down at the bottom. It turns out this is a path down to the Underdark, so they start wandering around to see what there is to see down here. After getting some free XP from a Minotaur who would have died to a trap anyway, Karlach pulls a magic sword from a stone and offers it to lae'zel. They find a nearby colony full of mushroom people who can talk with their minds. They pick up some quests in this colony, including scavenging some deadly mushrooms for a friendly mind flayer, finding a lost husband, and saving a tribe of gnomes from some Dwergar slavers. Figuring they might need to do something in the goblin camp, they head back there and get branded with a hot iron. This might be useful in the future. They also manage to rescue that flamboyant writer from earlier and bring him to camp, and he offers to try to take their tadpoles out. Figuring there could still be some stuff to do during this adventuring day, the team head to a nearby owlbear nest. The team buff up and then change into their wild shape forms before engaging. Karlach opens up by jumping in on top of the owlbear mama. She gets smacked a little bit, but it's not too bad. The others come in and join initiative as well, including 2 cultists out of revenge. Shadowheart lays some web down and goes to the high ground. When Karlach gives a bear tap to the owlbear, it calls for help, and the other one comes in from above. lae'zel flies up and blinds the new one with her talons. Immediately, the mate multi-attacks and takes lae'zel out of wild shape. Brutal. Shadowheart is now face to face with the mama, so she webs and then does a critical bite on it. lae'zel lays down a moonbeam while she is in her caster form, intentionally hitting the cultists in the process. They aren't happy with this and immediately go hostile. The mate completely slaughters Andric. Then, the mama jumps over and knocks Shadowheart out of wild shape. Both owlbears are about half dead at this point. Shadowheart goes back into spider form and poisons the mama bear. Then lae'zel reapplies her moonbeam to the mate. She changes into a raven and flies away before ending turn. Karlach is next to eat a multi-attack and loses her wild shape. And then, Shadowheart immediately after. Shadowheart, out of wild shape charges, has to change to spellcaster mode now. She drops a moonbeam on the mama bear. Karlach goes back into bear mode and continues smacking the mate, or tries to at least. lae'zel blinds it and flies to safety. Brenna finally goes down when the baby gives her a nibble. Then, lae'zel is brutally multi-attacked and knocked out of wild shape. This is getting very tiresome. Shadowheart barely survives another multi-attack from the mama. Karlach comes to her defense and swipes with her claws. The mama's looking weak now, but Shadowheart and lae'zel are both very near death. lae'zel uses Thunder Wave to launch the mate off the ledge into some webs. Then, Shadowheart, panicking, scrounges through her pack to find a tool that can finish off the mate. And she finds it. She takes advantage of her vantage point to drop a puddle of water. Then she uses a haste potion to get one more action. Finally, she uses what she found, a scroll of Witch Bolt. It was just enough damage to finish it off, leaving just the mama and baby left in combat. The mama gets one last turn and uses it to attack Karlach, but she handles it and stays in bear form. Shadowheart uses her stick to give a couple smacks, finally taking the mother down. The baby, distraught, approaches the dead body of his mother. Shadowheart, a lover of animals, feels mercy and decides to spare it. So it nom-noms its mama, as anybody would do in this situation. Feeling extremely exhausted after that brutal encounter with the owlbear family, the team go to rest up in camp. The next day, Karlach asks Volo about his progress. He attempts surgery, but it goes slightly unpredictably, and Karlach loses an eye. Volo, feeling some small amount of responsibility, gives her a steampunk eye prosthesis as a payment. Heading back out to explore, the team heads south of the blighted village and encounter personable old lady Ethel being accosted by some street toughs. Karlach tries to teach them a lesson with a bonk on the head, making sure to use non-lethal damage. Unfortunately, this staff is enchanted to deal piercing damage per turn. Whoops, sorry dude. On their way to visit Ethel at her home and make sure she's safe, the team find a group of sheep grazing in a meadow. Upon trying to strike up a conversation with them, she is confused to find they don't understand her animal speech. It is at this point that the glamour over the area fades, and they discover it is actually a putrid bog, and these sheep are actually bloodthirsty redcaps. They take the redcaps down and move on to Ethel's house. Ethel has heretofore been a reliable source of hill giant strength elixirs, which the team desperately need a ton of. So they decide to stay in her good graces to keep the supply going, despite some obviously suspicious vibes she is starting to give off. The team move on to the south end of the swamp and find a muddy area filled with some mephits and woodwoads. It was a pretty rough battle. Karlach even gets killed by a woodwoad before the end. But some fireworks helps takes them down, and Shadowheart uses a Revivify scroll to get Karlach back on her feet. They find some evidence in the tree hollow that implicates Kaga, so they take it back to the grove. It turns out Kaga was secretly working with some shadow druids who want control of the grove for themselves. After exposing her, she and the shadow druids threaten to kill the team and anybody who defends them. But Karlach uses some old druid wisdom to convince Kaga that this is the wrong path, and Kaga decides to redeem herself by defending the grove from the shadow druids. And so, a druid brouhaha ensues. Wild shapes and moonbeams for days up in here. But the girls come out on top and the shadow druids are soundly defeated. Kaga admits her wrongdoing and stops the druid rite to close down the grove. Since they don't seem to be using it anymore, lae'zel decides now is a good time to pilfer the idol. Nobody would mind a birdie flying off with this, right? They deliver it into the hands of Maul and get her reward, and after several failed attempts, Karlach steals it back. Who better to hold onto this but a team of druids? Now, the team is going to explore the Underdark a bit. Fearing for the lost dwarf husband, Karlach and friends head off in the direction he should be, but spot a hook horror on the way. After jumping into combat with it, and some nearby friends, one of them calls for help. This alerts a crazed drow who comes down and starts attacking. After a tough battle, the girls manage to defeat both the drow and all the nearby hook horrors. Strangely, no giant shark monsters attacked, not even one. Karlach used this opportunity to investigate the nearby tree and picked up some susur bark, necessary for a crafting quest she picked up earlier. Neat. Finally, Karlach finds the dwarf mushroom picker in a room full of glowy green mushrooms. He informs her these are bibberbang, and just the name kinda implies what they do. They go bang, especially when exposed to lit torches. So Karlach springs into action, literally. She uses Enhanced Leap to jump over all the deadly mushrooms and free Balin the dwarf from his crisis. After rescuing him, Karlach investigates the region and finds a pretty valuable mushroom called Noble Stalk, noted for being able to restore memories. Using a well-known exploit that somehow hasn't been patched yet, Karlach sends the Noble Stalk to her chest and then convinces Shadowheart to eat it. This unlocks a memory of hers. Karlach then recovers the Noble Stalk from the chest, which is not at all eaten. Shadowheart also invites Karlach off for some alone time, but given that Karlach is basically on fire at all times, no sexy times occur. This does, however, confirm the romance path for them. The next day, Shadowheart wants to talk even more, this time revealing the source of her wolf phobia. Upon finishing this conversation, I got the necessary Night Song points for Shadowheart to guaranteed spare the Night Song in Act 2. This is the earliest I've ever done it. For reference, the 4 that I got were for having her hand wound flare up 4 or more times, then consoling her about the pain, giving her the Noble Stalk, and then 2 more for the wolf memory cutscene since I read about the Selenite rites in the Owlbear Cave before. There are 2 left to get, and I can easily pick up both, but that isn't strictly necessary. Moving on, Karlach gave Dareth Bonecloak the Noble Stalk that Shadowheart definitely didn't eat. Next, they moved on to the ruined village on the waterfront in the Underdark, and are surprised by some Dwergar who ambush them. But Karlach shows off her neat brand, and they back off. Ignoring them for now, they will definitely be back later, Karlach proceeds up the road into a red area with lots of torch stalks. After climbing down a weird hole there, she finds the Festering Cove, a damp cavern full of fishmen who can't stop and won't stop chanting. Realizing that the god of murder they are praying to is actually just a rabid redcap, Karlach challenges it to a duel and the girls go to work. It doesn't take long for the guy to go down while surrounded by 3 wild-shaped druids. After bidding farewell to her new fish worshippers, Karlach reaches the nearby arcane tower where Lae'zel the Mind Flayer told her she can find some mushrooms he needs. There are some turrets outside, so lae'zel takes the safest route by flying over them as a raven and circling around the back of the tower. She picks up a susur bloom conveniently laying on the ground outside and puts it in a machine, turning the tower on finally. It is around this time that the team reaches level 5. Level 5 is pretty huge because it gives extra attack while in wild shape, allowing the girls to hit twice per turn. Very nice. It also grants access to level 3 spells, though druid level 3 spells are kind of mediocre. Karlach takes plant growth, Shadowheart takes daylight, and lae'zel swaps fog cloud for sleet storm and takes call lightning. Level 4 spells are really where it's at for druids, so looking forward to hitting level 7. Now, Karlach climbs the arcane tower and thoroughly picks up every book and piece of paper along the way. Except most of them she doesn't really read, and it turns out she really should have read a particular one. Because when she gets to the roof, she meets an armed contingent of automatons led by a certain Bernard, who uses a coded message to confirm Karlach's identity. It turns out, Karlach neglected to read the appropriate book, so she didn't get the memo, and Bernard went hostile. After retreating to regroup, the team come up with a plan. Bernard is resistant to all physical damage and a few magical types as well, such as fire and lightning, but he is notably not resistant to radiant damage. Bernard also likes to counter anytime he is attacked with a really nasty lightning elemental damage legendary action. As well, he is flanked by a cadre of minions, too many to take on safely. But they have a nasty vulnerability. A susur bloom completely shuts them down. So, they pick up one more Bloom from outside, climb back up to the top floor, and the girls start the battle with a moonbeam, which Bernard doesn't resist and can't counter. After taking a turn, each girl retreated back down the elevator, hoping the minions would follow and immediately get caught in the Bloom aura. It worked on the melee weapon-wielding minions, but the ranged ones took potshots from above. This meant a slight change in strategy. lae'zel flew up to them to give them a few smacks as well, and kept applying moonbeam pressure on Bernard. Shadowheart and Karlach both attempted to give Bernard a good smack, but he did too much damage with his counters and his static aura. In the end, the battle was long, but lots of moonbeams took down Bernard, and after he was gone, it was just cleanup on his minions. A difficult battle, and unnecessary, since it can usually be resolved peacefully. Read your books, friends. After the battle, Karlach took the mushrooms from the tower to Omeluum, finishing that quest and getting a new tadpole power. Finally, she took the bark and finished that quest as well. Now it's time to finally go deal with those leaders in the goblin camp to help the tieflings. Karlach got the jump on Priestess Gut and managed to surprise her. She went down in a turn before she could react. Using her key, the group went into her chambers to find an ogre named Palma. Shadowheart tried to sneak up on her, but it failed. So they all just ganged up on her in wild shape form instead. After clearing Gut and her servant, the team walked around taking stock of the layout of the camp. Destroying some lone war drums so they can't signal their allies, the team isolate and eliminate pockets of goblins. Here is a quick montage of the various goblins that were killed during this section. In the midst of eliminating all the goblins, Karlach takes a break for some S&M fun. Shadowheart seemed really into it. Next, the team stopped into the warg pens and found a bear under duress. It didn't take a genius to realize a bear in a cage in a goblin camp is probably a druid, so the girls went to work dispatching them to save their ally. Upon defeating all the goblins in the area, the bear revealed himself to be Halsin. After discussing their plans going forward, Karlach tells Halsin to sit tight while she continues cleaning up the rest of the camp. The next leader on the docket is Minthara, and I wish I could say it was an exciting battle, but she got surprised and went down before taking a single action just like Gut. At this point, the indoor goblins were mostly mopped up, so before finishing the leaders, the girls went outside to take care of the partiers as well. There was an attempt to take advantage of their open beer tub and some poison, but that failed. Instead, Karlach played some tunes to lure all the goblins into one spot, and her sisters dropped some nasty area spells to wipe them all out. A few call lightnings and moonbeams later, and more than half the force outside was wiped out. The girls continue with their typical battle strategy, talons and claws in goblin faces. In the end, the goblin camp was barren, and the girls were ready to finish the last group. With only one group left, the room containing Droragzlin, Karlach decided to bring some friends. She collected Halsin from the warg pens and the spiders in the pit below the temple. Then Shadowheart finally hatched the spider egg she had been carrying to get 5 spiderling allies. With a much larger force than usual, the team marched into Ragzlin's chamber, ready to brawl. Aside from Ragzlin himself, none of the other enemy combatants proved to be much of a challenge. They dropped like flies, while Karlach tanked Ragzlin in bear form. Shadowheart soon joined Karlach, while lae'zel, Halsin, and the big spiders finished off the others. Once it was only Ragzlin left, everybody converged on his position and overpowered him. In the end, it was another surprisingly easy battle, though much more involved than the other two leaders. The team traveled to the grove to inform them of their victory. Zivlor insists they hold a celebration at Karlach's camp that night, and Karlach is happy to oblige. Halsin is berating Kaga for her behavior, but he is more focused on Karlach's tadpole problem. Promising to help after the party, everybody settles in for a night of revelry. Karlach visits all her companions during the party, but since she is still running hot, she ends up having to sleep alone this time. The next day, the tieflings are all gone, and Halsin explains the next step, getting to Moonrise Towers. However, there are still some things left to do in the grove environs, so the girls set out for their next adventure. There's a large section of the wilderness in the north that the team haven't explored yet, so off they go. Along the way, they stop in a seemingly abandoned shack and find a mostly nude bugbear and ogre. After defeating them, they move on to the nearby road, which is covered in gore and hyenas. After they transform into gnolls, the team spring into action to take them down. Some more gnolls were hiding just up the hill, so they fight them as well. Exploring the area, they find an inn called Walking's Rest, but it is currently burning to the ground. Karlach busts the door down as a bear and rushes in to help. The other girls take their own routes inside, with lae'zel jumping straight up to the second floor window and Shadowheart going around the balcony on the left. lae'zel gets to the second floor first and finds a government official from Baldur's Gate trapped in a room. Shadowheart manages to free a man trapped under some debris. Karlach finds some treasure and takes that. Priorities. After everybody has gotten to safety, the woman tells Karlach that there was a Grand Duke staying there, and he was just kidnapped by the Absolute Cult. Hearing he is being taken to Moonrise Towers, Karlach resolves herself to rescue him. After finishing up at Joaquin's Rest, the team explore the other direction and find another group of gnolls. These ones seem to have a much more powerful leader, and they are attacking some people in a cave. The battle goes pretty well with not much difficulty, and as a reward, the people in the cave teach them about a secret hideout of theirs back at Joaquin's Rest. Going to investigate, they find the hideout is full of Zentarum, black market traders. In the Zentarum hideout, Karlach hears from an artist that he is being held prisoner and asks to be bought. So Karlach drops some coin to help the guy. Hopefully this doesn't come back to bite her later. Next, the team encounter a group of Githyanki harassing some flaming fist with a dragon. lae'zel can't help herself and runs down to greet them. Got a bad feeling about this one. lae'zel is in the middle of a conversation with the Githyanki leader, Kithrak Voss, when Karlach arrives. Karlach lets lae'zel take point here, though that turns out to be a pretty sizable mistake. In the middle of the conversation, lae'zel has to lie to the Kithrak about her intentions. He sees right through her since she has a terrible deception skill, something Karlach might have fared better at. At this point, it's too late. The Gith are hostile, so combat begins with Sarth Baretha and her team. Within the span of the first turn, Karlach is taken out of wild shape, then lae'zel is taken down to 0 and outright killed. It was gruesome. Shadowheart uses a speed potion to run as far away as she can, managing to escape. Karlach follows suit, immediately running. Thanks to her boots of speed, she gets away as well. So the girls revive lae'zel thanks to Bone Man and regroup for another attempt. This time, they have a plan. Shadowheart has the spell Hold Person, and it is just what they need here. The spell sticks on both Baretha and one of the other Gith. As a bonus, they were also surprised. Now at a huge advantage, the girls transform and start taking them down. The Gith still do very scary amounts of damage when they hit, but Baretha was taken down before she could act, and the others within a couple turns after. lae'zel is distraught, but they find a clue to where the Githyanki creche is, so they head that direction. lae'zel wants to visit the creche immediately, but Karlach has some reservations. She promises to go later. They meet an older lady named Esther who is quite angry with the residents of the creche. She wants to buy a Gith egg, and they chased her off. Karlach isn't about to sell a Githyanki child to this woman, especially when one of her sisters is a Gith. So she makes a compromise. Sell the owlbear egg and fool them into thinking it's Gith. Esther goes along with the plan, and ultimately this leaves the best outcome for the society in Act 3 anyway. Feeling there are a few items of unfinished business, the team return to the Underdark. After taking the root out of the Temple of Selûne, they encounter a field of petrified drow, and hiding amongst them, a giant floating spectator. Immediately recognizing this as the most difficult encounter thus far, Karlach summons the ogres to help. Thanks to the ogres and some good old-fashioned luck and persistence, the team managed to defeat the spectator. Not before it unpetrifies some of the nearby drow though, and they continue fighting the ogres after. Realizing she doesn't have the money to pay these guys off after the battle, Karlach decides now is the best time to kill the ogres as well, while they are distracted. Before they could figure out what was going on, the ogres were defeated and the drow not long after. Before proceeding, Karlach goes back to the Myconid colony to recruit Glut, who offered his services before. He revives a hook horror to help them in the coming encounters. Next, the team go find some minotaurs that were giving them trouble early on. The battle goes very well, and not a single land shark attacked. Finding it very strange that there are just no land sharks to be found in this place, the team go walk down the ramp near where lae'zel found her cool singing sword from the stone. That's when, finally, a land shark, or boulette as it's sometimes called, attacks. Since this thing is very hardy and resistant to most forms of damage, they had to improvise a little bit. lae'zel tosses a bottle of water at it, and with its newly acquired vulnerability to ice and lightning damage, Shadowheart dropped a very hefty Call Lightning. Shortly after, they managed to reduce all of its temporary HP and a chunk of its health. Before it could retreat, they stick a bone chill on it to prevent healing. After it retreats, the team goes over by the Susur tree looking for it again. This time, Karlach throws the water, and both lae'zel and Shadowheart drop lightning on it, killing it very quickly. Once it goes down, Glut raises it as a new minion for one last encounter. With the freshly raised boulette minion, they wander over to the abandoned village filled with Dwergar hunters. The boulette does a flying leap off a high cliff and lands right on Get Cole, killing him instantly. The boulette then leaps over and bites the barbarian, killing him pretty quickly as well. Once the boulette is looking weak and nearly done, Shadowheart and lae'zel jump in with some ranged attacks to finish the Dwergar off. After talking with Glut, he apparently wants to murder the sovereign of the Myconid colony. Karlach agrees, just so she can rat him out to Sovereign Spa, but for some reason that conversation option isn't available. So Karlach takes Glut out to a nearby private place and just kills him to prevent a tragedy with the Myconids. With all the work done in the Underdark, it is finally time to take the skiff across the Dark Lake. A boat full of Duergar approach them as they cross, but Karlach convinces them she is just returning some boots. And so, the team arrives in Grimforge, one of the potential routes to Moonrise Towers. Upon arriving in Grimforge, the girls run into the only nice Duergar in the entire game, Stonemason Kiss. All he cares about is learning about rocks, so Karlach gave him a hand and received a nice infernal alloy as a reward. Moving along, they ran into some not-so-nice Duergar next, some animal handlers trying to clear rubble using Deep Rothe. After convincing the Rothe to clear the rubble using animal persuasion, the Duergar predictably were assholes about it and went hostile. They regretted that decision, especially the Barbarian who went rocketing off the edge into the lava below. At this point, the team reaches level 6. Notable changes: now, wild shape attacks are magical, and some new wild shape forms. However, at this time, the only change will be Karlach upgrading from Bear to Owlbear. This will be important for various reasons later. Karlach then talked to a Duergar named Elder Brithvar and struck up a deal to make an alliance against the drow True Soul Nier. To seal the deal, Karlach threw a scrying eye into the water. Speaking with a few spiders, they were easily convinced to leave their Duergar master and join the ranks of Lolth instead. Then, Karlach dispatched the master himself. Finally, a couple more pairs of Duergar nearby were doing nasty things. First, a pair kicking some poor gnome corpses around, and finally, some drunk Duergar hassling a gnome slave. Both pairs were quickly defeated, and the gnome was grateful enough to give the team the poison he was planning to use to kill them anyway. Searching for some explosives to free Nier from a pile of rubble, the girls went up to a dark, abandoned corner of the region. There, they found a gnome escapee hoarding a barrel of smoke powder. Upon approaching her, Karlach discovers it isn't ordinary smoke powder, but a legendary explosive called rune powder. Karlach talked the gnome down from blowing them both to hell, and then got a vial of the rune powder as a reward. Now, Karlach went back to find out what is happening with this true soul stuck in the rocks. When she got there, she turned in the boots to the sergeant and got rewarded, then used some regular smoke powder satchels to clear the rocks. Why waste perfectly good rune powder on this jerk? After Nier came out of the newly destroyed hole, he immediately tossed an innocent gnome into the lava for actually no reason but pure cruelty. Karlach couldn't sit by and watch this, so she immediately dropped any pretense and stood up to him. Telling Brithvar the time has come, the battle between two Duergar factions begins. Things start out well, but quickly go off the rails when both Nier and the various Mind Masters start using mind control magic on the allies. Wherever possible, the team made it a priority to kill the Mind Masters first to stop these shenanigans. However, Nier eventually got a hold of Karlach in owlbear form, which was a pretty deadly foe to be up against. To free Karlach from the effect, she had to take some form of non-psychic damage, so Shadowheart did the most reasonable thing, drop the moonbeam on her friend. With Karlach freed, she could get revenge on Nier for controlling her with a pounce and some claws. Once the Mind Masters and Nier was knocked down, it became a much easier battle. A couple of turns of cleanup later and the fight was won. Karlach convinced Brithvar to free the gnome slaves before he left, and she found her old buddy Barkus nearby and invited him to stay at her camp for a bit. Now, there are some upper levels to explore, so they set out to see what's up there. Karlach finds a Sharan idol for Shadowheart and gifts it to her. Then, they encounter a group of devils that were hanging out in a room by themselves, a Maragon and some Hellsboars. Following a path through the upper level, Shadowheart found her way to a different section separate from where the Duergar were doing work. Everybody regrouped on that side and tossed some animated armors into a nearby lake of lava. Then they found a strange rare metal ore called mithril. Continuing down, they discovered the real deal, the adamantine forge, finally found. After killing some magma mephits and picking up one more piece of mithril, the girls started preparations for using the forge. Now, there were some hints in the various materials about the adamantine forge that you pick up about Grimm's existence, but realistically, there's not much reason in-universe for Karlach to make the exact preparation she does to fight Grimm. However, I had to make it work this time. She is an owlbear after all. This is the best possible run to do this strategy in. So, I started collecting the required tools for the owlbear from the top rope strat. First, an elixir of the Colossus, easily crafted using materials already on hand. Next, a scroll of enlarge. This one was an issue. It took me more than 20 minutes real time of long resting and checking the only two merchants who could have one over and over again. I would say at least 7 or 8 rests before I saw it. And then, once the preparations were complete and I put the plan into action, it failed. Karlach did a whopping 20 damage to Grimm, and it was hopeless to win from here. So I save-scummed a little bit because after looking it up, the strategy should absolutely still work. I did something wrong. I tried again, this time utilizing lae'zel as bait to start combat, and it failed again. Getting frustrated, I tried one last time, meticulously making sure all the factors I could control were in place, and finally, it worked. Karlach did a whopping 800 damage to Grimm in one leap, taking him down instantly. Satisfied, I took my rewards, adamantine armor given to lae'zel, and an adamantine shield given to Shadowheart, and then got out of dodge. On the road to Rosimorn Monastery, Karlach encounters a blue jay who asks her to beat up some asshole eagles, so naturally, she obliges. Outside the entrance, the group spots some Githyanki escorting a few absolute cultists inside. Karlach wisely keeps her mouth shut as the encounter quickly turns bloody when a cultist is killed trying to flee. They seal the door behind them with a magic lock, so Karlach looks for another way inside. Slipping through a busted window, they find a winery full of drunk kobolds. Karlach transforms into an owlbear and reduces the entire room to a sticky puddle of red liquid. Probably just wine. They find some sort of ceremonial weapon on a kobold corpse. Into the bag it goes. Upstairs, they're ambushed by Gramishkas, cat-like chaos gremlins with an allergy to magic. After dealing with them the same way as the kobolds, lots of smashing, they climbed to the roof and found the eagles mentioned by the blue jay. A few crushed bodies later, the blue jay flies in to offer his thanks by teaching them about a stash of treasure. Then, Karlach loots the nest and finds another ceremonial weapon. Deeper inside the ruins, they stumble upon a guardian of faith. No summoner to be found. Strange. But it has another ceremonial weapon at its feet. Since it can't move, they just hurl fireballs at it and pick up the newly available weapon. With all these ceremonial things in hand, they find a chamber with some plinths and put them down. The reward is a buff called the Morning Lord's Blessing and some sort of magical crest. No idea what it does yet, but feels important. Now it is finally time to pay the Gith a visit. Inside the creche, lae'zel takes point. Her people, her rules. She leads the group into the training room, where a Gith youth is being harassed by the Savarsh for failing at violence. lae'zel accepts an invitation to give him a lesson. When he refuses to fight back, she delivers the Githyanki version of a lecture by killing him cleanly and without hesitation. Later, when Karlach asks her about it, lae'zel explains her experiences as a youth at her own creche and how she killed more than a few of her classmates. They also find another slate about Orpheus on the boy's body, which lae'zel explains while simultaneously cursing it as treasonous slander. At the hatchery, the party talks their way into getting the last unhatched Gith egg. Maybe if lae'zel carries this thing around, it will teach her some maternal instincts. Maybe. Around this time, the party hits level 7, which means level 4 spells, particularly strong for druids. Karlach picks up Conjure Woodland Being, lae'zel Ice Storm and Wall of Fire, and Shadowheart Blight and Conjure Minor Elemental. In the infirmary, lae'zel finally finds what she has been searching for all this time, the Zaith'isk. Finally, she would be cleansed of this aberration in her brain. Karlach lets lae'zel get first dibs in the chair, but something is wrong. As the machine lights up, Karlach connects to lae'zel's mind and senses raw, agonizing pain. Karlach tries to use her own psionic energy to keep things under control, but fails, again and again. Until at the end, Karlach finds the opportunity to absorb the Zaith'isk's power for herself, and by the grace of a natural 20 Arcana check, succeeds. The machine explodes, the Doctor goes hostile, and is quickly dispatched. In the aftermath, Karlach has a strange new power called Awakened, and lae'zel has some drained stats, but nothing that a nearby tadpole won't fix. Furious that the Doctor sabotaged her cleansing, lae'zel urges Karlach to report the treachery to the Kithrak. Inside the Kithrak's chamber, they overhear her speaking with a mysterious higher-up, someone with even more authority than she has. He walks off deeper into the complex, and she locks the door behind him. When lae'zel speaks to the Kithrak, she reveals that she is carrying the weapon the Githyanki are searching for, Shadowheart's Magic D20. When the Kithrak fails to take it for herself, she has little choice but to let the party pass by and speak to the Inquisitor in person. In the chamber with the Inquisitor, a colossal image of Vlaakith herself appears to address lae'zel and offers her ascension in exchange for one thing: cleansing the artifact, or astral prism as she calls it, by killing its occupant. So they agree and go inside. Inside the astral prism, lae'zel isn't allowed to approach, which means Karlach has to go on ahead alone. Now she is face to face with her dream visitor. Karlach hears the dream visitor out and decides to spare her. When Karlach goes back and tells lae'zel what happened, she decides to show her directly using the tadpole. The dream visitor claimed Vlaakith is a fraud and doesn't have any of the godlike power she claims to. lae'zel is not convinced. Nothing about this situation is adding up for her. But the dream visitor warned Karlach that the Inquisitor would be hostile, so she got ready just in case. Upon exiting the astral prism, turns out, yes, he is very hostile. The Inquisitor and his band of Githyanki warriors immediately tried to destroy the party with psionic magic and floating purple swords. Karlach came in as an owlbear, but she doesn't stay in that form for long. The others decide to just play it safe and use magic to win the day. Shadowheart lays a Create Water on the Inquisitor and a few of his friends, and between her and lae'zel, they have enough ice and lightning magic to pull through. Now, lae'zel is a traitor to her people, but on the bright side, she has 100 approval with Karlach now. I don't think I've ever even seen that before, so that's neat. While looting the room, they find a hidden path by smacking a statue with a stick. This is where the blood of Lathander is kept, a mace with radiant power and perpetual light. They use the crest they found earlier to get it without any trouble, and Shadowheart decides to keep it handy. On the way out of the creche, the Kithrak is waiting to ambush them. It was a bit of a messy fight thanks to the fear spell the Kithrak used, but no deaths, other than on the Githyanki side of course. The whole creche is hostile now, so the team go around the place room by room taking them out. First up is the Merchant. This fight was a lot messier than the others so far. It actually got pretty close to a game over, but at least the Merchant dropped some sick loot, such as the Knife of the Undermountain King and the Gloves of Dexterity. There are a few rooms left to clean up. First, the training room with the Savarsh. Next, the entrance corridor. Then, the infirmary, and finally, the hatchery. After cleaning up all of these groups, the team sell their wares to Esther out in the mountain pass and get ready to press on into the next area. Unfortunately, the road is blocked by a wall of undead. The team leap into battle with them, and a combination of wild shapes and moonbeams take them all out, though there is some mild nausea along the way. That night, as they rest on the edge of the Shadow-Cursed lands, they are interrupted by yet another Githyanki interloper. This is Kithrak Voss, the same Githyanki who was riding the Red Dragon back in the first video. This time though, he isn't here to kill. He is here to convince lae'zel to join his cause. Voss is actually trying to overthrow the Lich Queen Vlaakith, and he knows the occupant of the Astral Prism can do it. At first, she isn't hearing any of his treasonous babble, but with recent events such as the Zaithisk and the Inquisitor battle, she is starting to feel a little bit of doubt. Crossing into the Shadow-Cursed lands, Karlach meets a group of goblins waiting to be guided to Moonrise Towers. She ingratiates herself into their group and is instructed to use a lyre she picked up from Inthara back in the goblin camp. Her playing is completely awful, and the Drider that rolls up is definitely not pleased, but he invites her to join them all the same. The team proceed down the road when suddenly they are ambushed by a group of Harpers. Taking this opportunity to snatch the magic lantern from the Drider, the team side with the Harpers and turn on the cultist convoy. Good thing Karlach was already in owlbear form. This fight went much better than one would expect, considering Karnas here loves to give himself Sanctuary and counterattacks with psychic damage. But Sanctuary doesn't stop like any of the nasty druid tricks, including crushing Flight from Karlach or Moonbeam from lae'zel. Shadowheart's ice methods could even get a little damage in. The battle was over quickly with minimal casualties. The Harpers take up the moon lantern the Drider dropped and take it to a nearby enclave, which they are kind enough to invite the team to visit. On the way there, they battle some nasties hiding in the shadows, some weird-looking gremlins called measles, and some shadow-cursed dogs. Eventually, they make their way to the last bastion of light in this cursed land, the Last Light Inn. When they arrive, a rather famous character from games long past shows up to interrogate them, Jaheira. Karlach immediately fangirls over her, like, immediately. When Maul comes over to vouch for Karlach, Jaheira relents and lets them enter the inn. The quartermaster lets them use her shop, and Karlach got a decent gear upgrade there. Then, Karlach spots Dammon as well, and finally gets another tune-up for her infernal heart. Now, she can finally touch another person without roasting them. Dammon makes some subtle suggestions, but then kinda just gives up. Well, Karlach is in a relationship with Shadowheart anyway, so no big deal. Karlach trades some more infernal metal for an armor set and the masks from Grimforge for a set of bombs. Then, they head inside. One strange interaction happens when Karlach speaks with Mattis, the tiefling child. At this point, he makes a point of calling out that he recognizes Karlach from her time in the Hells as a combatant and that she was famous. Karlach is, of course, flattered and has a nice chat with him. But the thing is, does he not remember when he scammed her in the Grove or something? Why did he wait to bring up her fame until now? Just a weird oversight when playing his avatar Karlach, I guess. Karlach takes Jaheira up on her offer for a drink and continues to fangirl over her. She doesn't hesitate to drink the clearly tainted beverage, which lae'zel and Shadowheart are none too pleased with. But the fact that this drink is spiked with truth serum ultimately doesn't matter because Karlach was always going to be truthful here. Jaheira explains about the big threat in this land, Ketheric Thorm. He is a fearsome general from generations past who is thought to be dead and buried. Jaheira interred him in the mausoleum herself, but he is back, and now he is invincible. Jaheira tasks Karlach with infiltrating Moonrise Towers and finding Ketheric's weakness so they can finally put him to rest, for good this time. They also find out about Isabel, a cleric of Selûne who is responsible for keeping this inn protected from the curse, and she can offer protection to the party as well. But there are plenty more characters to talk to downstairs, and next up on the docket is Raphael, sitting and playing a board game with Maul. Usually, you can choose to help Maul cheat and win this game by using a sleight of hand check, but I chose to use Karlach's unique interaction here. So, Maul loses the game and slinks off, while Raphael gloats over his new prize. Karlach has no love for devils, and Raphael is particularly irritating to her. She has several unique dialogue options here that other avatars don't. After Raphael blips out of there, the next person to visit is Barkus Root, who at some point made the move from camp to here. He is still going on about saving his friend Walbrin from the cult, and Karlach is still on the hook to get it done. Patience, little man. Some of the tieflings on the first floor are crying over their missing friends. Now that they mention it... It turns out Zevlor completely dropped the ball and got almost all of his group either killed or captured by the Absolute Cult. The ones that survived either made it here to Last Light or are trapped in Moonrise Towers. Alfira here even mentions that amateur illusionist Roland managed to rescue the children at the cost of his brother and sister. Guess we have another group of victims to rescue. In the next room we find a group of flaming fists and the lady we rescued back in Joaquin's Rest, Counselor Floric. She basically reiterates that Duke Ravengard is in Moonrise Towers. Yeah, we know, who isn't at this point? But then she says something that piques Karlach's interest. There is a new lord in town back in the BG, Lord Gortash. Now that is a name she's familiar with, a name that opens up some pretty deep wounds. But let's leave that revenge story aside for the next video, shall we? There is a man singing a song in bed here. Honestly, this is the first time I sat and listened to his song, and not gonna lie, he has a decent voice.
We see what we see and do just what we please. Together, waiting for the sun.
Right here.
He is in some sort of spiritual coma or something, and we have no idea how to wake him up. For some reason, Karlach got the uncanny desire to go talk to Big Bear Halsin and see what he's been up to. So after a little chat with Halsin, he mentions a name, Thaniel. Weird, that singing man also said the name Thaniel. Putting two and two together, Halsin rushes over to Last Light to investigate. Now we have some direction, sorta. A memo he was carrying does mention a healing house somewhere in the Shadowlands though. Guess we will have to investigate that at some point. Heading upstairs, Karlach speaks to the person responsible for keeping this place together, Cleric Isabel. She blesses the team with some protection against the Shadow Curse, and even gives them a moon lantern to protect against the worst part near the towers. Then, out of nowhere, some guy who has never been seen or mentioned up to this point waltzes in and acts like he owns the place. He also has some really ratty wings that are very uncool. It turns out he is here to kidnap Isabel and take her to Ketheric at Moonrise Towers. Well, Karlach has no intention of letting this weirdo take her away. And so, a battle begins. Marcus isn't so tough on his own, he just has a big stick really, but he summons a fleet of winged horrors and commands them to focus fire on Isabel. While some mysterious female voice repeats the same voice lines over and over every few seconds, the team starts beating up Marcus. He is defeated pretty quickly and everything is looking good, just some minions left to fight. A few winged horrors come into the room and start hitting Isabel. I think this is the wrong script. This is probably from another video. Yeah, let me look around for a second. Here it is. Sorry about that. Here we go. Let me try that again. Starting out, lae'zel yeets a winged horror over the balcony, removing him from being a threat for a while. Shadowheart makes sure to relocate Marcus out to the balcony to get him away from a certain vulnerable lady. Then, she pops a moonbeam on his face to try to maximize damage. Karlach goes straight to fighting the winged horrors first. She has a feeling those might be a bigger threat than Marcus. Marcus uses an area attack but somehow misses Isabel. For some reason he can't find her. Wonder where she went. lae'zel has already used her action but goes bird mode just in case. Then Isabel appears like out of nowhere and attacks Marcus. That's weird. After a round of fighting from summons and harpers and whatnot, Isabel is pretty much unharmed. Karlach smashes the horrors in the room with her, then Shadowheart pulls a lae'zel and yeets Marcus off the roof to take him out of the picture. Guess those wings really are just for show, huh? lae'zel follows him down and takes out the horror first with some pecks. Isabel is now totally safe in her room, so she can be pretty much ignored for now. Some more fighting and the horrors in the main room are soundly defeated by the likes of Halsin and Jaheira. The team starts gathering downstairs where Marcus was tossed. At this point, he is all alone against a whole gaggle of colorful characters, so it is only a matter of time before he is defeated and the battle ends with Isabel none the worse for wear. After the battle, that irritating voice just keeps going over and over again, so Karlach searches for the source of it. It turns out it was coming from the moon lantern that Isabel gave them before the battle. Upon examining it, it turns out a pixie is inside the lantern and is asking for help. Karlach is quick to help her out in exchange for some protection from the curse. The pixie has a pretty quick change of attitude upon getting out, but she gives what she promised, perfect protection. Now, the shadow curse is completely ineffective. What more could a dingus want? The tiefling children are making a ruckus about something, so when Karlach approaches, she finds out Maul was kidnapped during the scuffle. Add her to the list, I guess. Upstairs, Jaheira is checking up on Isabel, but she's fine. We don't learn a whole lot of new information, so just moving on, I guess. The team start roaming the shadow-cursed lands looking for things to fight. First, there is a group of nasties under the inn skulking about. A daylight spell from Shadowheart makes their attacks much less effective, so they go down pretty quickly. Next, some birds who think they can leave a trap and surprise passersby. Well, good thing Karlach is running an elixir of vigilance. She does some smashy and wipes them out pretty quickly. There are some groups of plant monsters who also try to ambush people, but some smashing from Karlach, I think you get it. Finally, something interesting, there is this guy hanging about in the Shadow-Cursed lands with his pet albino raven. He is trying to use a Speak with Dead spell on some lady, and he enlists Karlach's help. It turns out she is responsible for the death of some people a long time ago, and this guy wants justice on their behalf. So Karlach is sent on a schlep to pick up evidence of her crimes at the nearby pub. We will check back in on this quest later. The raven is a total dick, by the way.
Everyone hates you. You think the creatures of the realm owe you something just because you never shut up. They whisper about you, you know. Call you stupid and ignorant. They wish you were dead.
The team stumble upon a house in the region, and while investigating it, see a kid who is trying to hide while invisible. Well, Karlach's steampunk eye sees right through that nonsense. Upon speaking to him, her druid senses are tingling, and she seems to think this kid is more than he appears. But he insists upon playing with her, so after a little bit of back and forth, she gives in and offers to play his game. At first, he tries to go invisible and go hide again. It is not very effective. Then, he ups the stakes by summoning his mummy and daddy to try and hunt her down while playing the game. Once again, he tries to go invisible, but Karlach's eye spots him. Since lae'zel is better at getting around, she is sent to win the game while Karlach and company hide from mummy and daddy. Not long after, when Oliver reaches his hiding spot, lae'zel is ready and waiting to catch him and end this game. Oliver doesn't seem to like losing very much, but he gives them a reward anyway, and then goes back to playing by himself. Across a chasm from Oliver's house, there's another ambush full of plant monsters. This one has a big boss, the Shambling Mound. But for a party of druids with level 4 spells, this is a pretty easy battle. From the safety of the other side of the chasm, they used Wall of Fire and Moonbeam to wipe out the entire enemy force, and were never in danger at any point. And the reward? Level 8. At this level, everybody gets another feat, and this one is kind of obvious. They all take Alert. Alert is just too useful to pass up in Honor mode. Going first is always best. They got some new spells as well, but nothing too special. Shadowheart does take Polymorph. Let's see if she puts that to good use. One last new addition is a new wild shape in the form of the saber-toothed tiger. Up till now, everybody has gotten an upgrade at least once except Shadowheart, so I think she deserves something new. lae'zel could probably use the upgrade more at this point since the raven is starting to lose its luster, but she can wait a little bit longer. lae'zel is perfectly capable of doing great stuff in caster mode anyway, especially with Falara Luve's Shriek to increase damage. So Shadowheart switches from Spider to Tiger. This should be a nice change of pace. One last battle on this side of the Shadow-Cursed lands, the team run into Roland being attacked by some enforcers from the Magician's Alliance. Good chance for Shadowheart to test her new saber teeth on, so she wipes them out quickly. Roland throws a fit about how he's being blackballed from even smaller venues and runs back to the inn. Upon crossing the river towards Moonrise Towers, the team find themselves in a toll house. There are some strange jangling noises upstairs, so Karlach goes up to investigate, only to be threatened by some woman? Creature? She is demanding gold. Well darn, it just so happens that not moments ago, the team sent their gold to camp for safekeeping. Not a coin left. What unfortunate timing. When Karlach says she has no money to give, this unusual creature goes hostile. For this battle, there are a bunch of skulls floating about the area, and it turns out they are the real meat of this fight. Defeating them effectively means winning the whole thing, and they go down pretty easily to a couple owlbear claws. Shadowheart is unfortunately in the blast zone when the boss uses her automatic counterattack when a skull is defeated. This results in Shadowheart turning into solid gold for several turns, and that basically means she is out of the fight. But the boss doesn't care all that much and keeps hitting her anyway, so at least she is making for a pretty useful tank. Once all the skulls were down, lae'zel swooped in from on high and dealt the finishing blow to our naked undead foe. After looting the toll house for all the gold left behind, Karlach spotted some undead gathered around a statue in the courtyard. This was a quick battle with no damage taken at all, so they just moved on to the next location, the Masons Guild next door. After finding a secret door in the basement, they fight some shadows and get some really nifty rewards in the process. 1. A scroll of knock. There is a door coming up that is just asking for this one. and 2, the Hat of Arcane Acuity, given to lae'zel since she has the most spell sword fighting style of the group. There is also a particular battle coming up where this will do some real work. Finally, the team make their way down to Moonrise Towers. They are greeted by some cultist guards at the door, so Karlach goes into spy mode and plays along with them. After safely getting inside, she meets a bugbear merchant by the name of Lan Tarv. This guy was waiting for Karlach to show up as he has a few soul coins on his person, courtesy of a devil by the name of Flo. Flo is an old frenemy of Karlach's and left this little gift for her as a sort of elaborate troll attempt. Karlach has to sit and listen to some really depressing stories about the souls inside the coins. Day thoroughly ruined, she takes her prize, then does some shopping. Of note is the blood-obsessed Araja Blodra in a nearby storeroom. She offers to take a little blood from all the members in the party in exchange for some money and some awful potions. But there is more to this story as well, so we will be checking back in on her in the next video. A quick visit to the kitchen leads to seeing the cook instructing her gnoll assistants on how to properly stir the stew. It turns out this chef is actually using her tadpole power to forcibly command the gnolls to do her bidding, essentially slavery. Karlach is not down with this, so she turns the tables and snips her connection with her own illithid abilities. Once freed from her control, the gnolls turn to Karlach with a hungry look in their eyes, but Karlach growls right back at them and they back down. Now, Karlach enters the throne room and sees the man of the hour, Ketheric Thorm. He is currently busy hearing the excuses of some goblins who failed to get adequate pictures of Spider-Man. When he determines the punishment for their failure is death, one of the goblins shoots her shot and tries to kill him with a halberd. It goes poorly. As for the rest of the goblins, Ketheric decides Karlach should be responsible for their fates and takes his lackey upstairs. Karlach isn't much for executions, so she lets the goblins go unharmed, and so they wander off, never to be seen again. Upstairs, Karlach spoke to Zarel, the person in charge under Ketheric right now. She wants to see how the goblins were tortured and killed, and is furious to see them walk away into the sunset, but Karlach managed to convince her it's all good. Zarel tells Karlach about the task at hand. Ketheric's right-hand man Balthazar went off to retrieve something important and they lost contact. Given a little bit of free rein to explore, the team visited Balthazar's chambers and hoo boy is this a nightmare realm. A secret puzzle involves using the excised heart of a corpse as a key. What a freak. Getting out of that place as soon as humanly possible, Karlach and company visit Ketheric's private chambers. There, they meet an undead dog who sniffs the selenite magic that Isabel left on them. She seems pretty nostalgic for the scent. What could they be hinting at here? She seems pretty chill with letting everybody run around, so a little bit of looting and they move on. The next stop is the lowest level in the towers, the prison in the basement. Down here, there are several guards, and finally they spot the kidnapped tieflings and gnomes. Knowing it would be difficult to get them out safely with all these guards around, the team go to work picking them off one by one. After removing all the obstacles, Karlach finally speaks to the prisoners and learns that the gnomes, led by Wulbren himself, have a plan to escape. Karlach retrieves his hammer and gives it to him, and he uses it to bust down the back wall and the wall of the cell containing the tieflings. Then they hop in a boat and Karlach shows them to Last Light Inn. In Last Light, after a little bit of TSA screening for contraband, the newly freed tieflings and gnomes run upstairs to join their loved ones. Alfira gives quite a haul of rewards when she is reunited with her girlfriend Lacrissa, and Roland is still being a bit salty even when he sees his brother and sister are okay, but in the end he apologizes for his attitude and thanks Karlach properly. Barkis is a little slow on the uptake, but when he hears Wulbren is back he quickly runs to see him, except Wulbren appears to have absolutely no love for Barkis. Definitely a one-sided relationship here. Barkis denies it, but Karlach sees just how callous Wulbren is being. Once everybody is safe and sound, Karlach takes her new rewards back to camp and settles in for the night. That night, lae'zel, with her 100 approval, decides that means they must be a couple now. Karlach is understandably confused, as they have had no romantic encounters at all thus far. Since Karlach isn't the type to cheat, especially with her actual romantic partner sleeping like 2 feet away, she rebuffs lae'zel and that is the end of that. The next day, Karlach sets out to explore the rest of Rythwin Town while searching for Balthazar. The first stop is the town square statue, which has some conspicuous buttons on the sides. After pressing them in the right order, they reveal a secret cloister for Sharan worship, and the statues within offer a trial of sorts. Passing some saving throws and mental stats leads to a day-long buff, +5 to that stat. So Karlach goes through and grabs them all, netting a +5 bonus to Charisma, Wisdom, and finally, Intelligence. These will come in handy. Karlach finds the pub that one guy back in the shadowed battlefield directed her towards, and sees a bloated monstrosity tending bar there. She listens to his request, that she drink his drink and sing some songs, keep him entertained. But this drink is mighty suspicious, so she decides to use some clever sleight of hand tricks to dispose of it without him noticing. First drink, successfully faked, and she sings the song of discovering Grimforge in the Underdark. The big undead thing is thoroughly impressed with this story, so he answers a question about the nature of the curse, then asks her to go another round. Next drink, successfully faked, and she sings the song of defeating the Inquisitor of Vlakith in the Githyanki Kresh. Once again impressed, he answers another question about the nature of the curse, and passes yet another drink to Karlach. Third drink, oh. The bartender catches her this time, and he is none too pleased to see she has been wasting perfectly good drink. Battle begins. Thizabald here has straight up immunity to physical damage, so wild shapes aren't going to cut it here. It's time for a magic party. Shadowheart drops the water to make this dude weak to ice and lightning, two elements that the team have plenty of access to. And all three of them use haste potions to take as much advantage of each turn as they can. Ice Storm and Call Lightning cause a lot of damage, though this guy has tons of HP, so he can take quite a few hits. When he gets his first turn, he tries to chase after the nearest person, but thanks to the sheet of ice at his feet, he slips and falls and loses his turn. That gives everybody even more time to take him down before he can do any damage, and it was more than enough. In the second round, Thizabald is blasted with more lightning and goes down. All that remains are some pathetic zombie minions who are no issue whatsoever. Karlach searches the pub and finds the evidence she was tasked with retrieving, a ledger containing an account of the events written in the accused's own hand. Taking this evidence back to the quest giver, he uses another Speak with Dead spell to channel her essence through himself so she can be put on trial with Karlach as judge. But this guy probably should have looked for a less good-aligned judge if he wanted this lady to be punished, because Karlach is very weak to sob stories and forgives her. Furious that she didn't make the right judgment, he goes hostile together with his raven buddy, but they stood no chance against Fangs and Claws. Back in Rythwin Town, the team run into a familiar face in the darkness, Arabella, the tiefling child they rescued from crazy druid Kalga and her snake. Seems she's got some new magical powers, very druid-like powers. Well, she's looking for her parents, who have gone missing in the shadows. She asks to stay at camp while the party looks for her parents. It doesn't take long to find them. They're both lying dead, being tended by a delusional sister at the House of Healing. Bummer. In the surgery theater in the House of Healing, Karlach encounters a crazed undead doctor and his disciples. When she approaches, she listens to his ramblings, clearly derived from extreme Shar worship. He insists that only in darkness can one find peace, and that means removing one's eyes, among other things. When he suggests letting the sisters practice their technique on Karlach, she makes a few clever suggestions, that their skill is lacking, and the best way to practice would be on himself. Somehow, he agrees with this idea and is brutally stabbed to death. The sisters scatter and leave the House of Healing clear to explore freely, and Karlach discovers a battered lute on his body. Maybe this can help with the flaming fist in a coma back at Lastlight. There were some other random encounters, but the most notable one was a group of Githyanki ambushers waiting at the road to Baldur's Gate. The little warning device Kithrak Voss left helped the team get the jump on them, so Karlach jumped on them. Right. So these Gith are pretty tough usually, but with a surprise round and strong owlbear swipes and jugular strikes from Shadowheart, the leader dropped fast. With her out of the way, the rest were no trouble at all. Honestly, the synergy between owlbear Crushing Flight and saber-toothed tiger Jugular Strike is very impressive. Since Jugular Strike does basically double damage against prone targets, it makes things die very quickly. While exploring, the team cleared out an area filled with zombies, then a pit filled with oozes, and finally went to a fishing lodge on the beach to wipe out some Kuatoa. After that battle, they leveled up to level 9, but decided to speak to Raphael, who was waiting nearby first. Raphael gave some cryptic warnings about something scary waiting inside the next area. Karlach, as usual, is just sick of every word coming out of his mouth. She has absolutely no patience for devils and their schemes. They aren't going in there right this second anyway, so thanks for the heads up, Raphael. Maybe that will be good to remember later. At level 9, Druids gain access to their 5th level spells. None of these are super notable, but Karlach decided to pick up Insect Plague. lae'zel doesn't have any summons yet, so she took Conjure Elemental. and Shadowheart took Wall of Stone, though not sure if that one will see any use. At this point, basically every encounter on the map of the Shadowcurse lands has been resolved, so it's time to clean up some lingering quests. Most notably, the resolution of the Shadowcurse itself. Halsin has been waiting patiently at Last Light with the Comatose Flaming Fist Art Culling for some time now, and the team recently acquired the key to proceeding with that quest. When they went back and played the loot they found, Art woke up and immediately recognized Halsin. It seems he really got to know Thaniel well in his time in the Shadowfell and knew to expect Halsin when he awoke. He gave an important clue to Halsin on how to locate Thaniel in the Shadowfell, so they set out for a nearby lakeshore to begin the rescue operation. While Halsin decided to go into the portal by himself, he left everybody else behind to keep things safe. So many monsters came out of nowhere that you can't even count them all. Using some trap spells to keep a lot of them under control, Shadowheart left a darkness patch on the portal to protect it from direct attacks. Then, they threw Karlach around to smash everybody one group at a time. After the battle, Halsin brought the limp body of Thaniel out of the Shadowfell, but something's wrong. He is incomplete somehow. That's when Karlach remembered a certain cheeky young boy out in the shadows that bore an uncanny resemblance. So, next stop, Oliver's house. When Karlach mentioned the name Thaniel to Oliver, he got quite upset and went off through a portal to another place, so the team went after him. And that starts another big battle, but this one has some interesting rules. Oliver is behind a barrier of necrotic energy and he can't be harmed, and hitting the barrier directly does massive damage back in return. Instead, defeating Oliver's minions is the key, as each one of them that is defeated hurts the barrier for 10 HP. Oliver likes to spawn a group of 5 weak shadow clones every turn, so finding a way to wipe them out is the fastest way to victory. But Oliver also drops a puddle of necrotic damage on the first clone defeated every round, so some strategy is required to keep party members out of that. Using summons and area attacks, the team managed to defeat the clones quickly and efficiently without taking too much damage. After the last little bit of damage is dealt to the barrier, Oliver makes his case about why he doesn't want to rejoin with Thaniel. It seems he feels like he has been tainted too much by the curse, but it is quite simple to convince him, as all he really wants is a friend. Back in camp, Thaniel is feeling fine again, and he says the final obstacle to healing the land of the curse is the one who started it to begin with. Ketheric Thorm must die. And now for something completely different. Karlach goes to visit her auntie for a quick fix of elixirs when she decides to muster up the courage to ask what happened to that young girl Mayrina like a month ago. Ethel is very suspicious in her response. Karlach's hero senses are tingling out of control now, so she does a little investigating, and in doing so, realizes the fireplace is an illusion with a secret behind it, and when she tries to step inside, combat. The team hold back a bit since they somehow know that she would just teleport away at the beginning of the second round. So once she does, they go back behind the fireplace and find a hag's lair inside, filled with nightmares and horrors galore. After finding her way past a very scared wooden door, Karlach and team notice some people wearing suspicious-looking masks blocking the way. Channeling her inner secret agent, she decides to take a more stealthy approach and use some masks to disguise the team. However, she knows better than to just stick a random mask on her face that a hag left on a table for her to find, so everybody uses protection from good and evil as a defensive measure. It works like a charm. Using the masks, the team are able to walk right past all the guards, and they also are able to see that all of the traps in the tunnels are illusions. Very convenient. So they make their way to the bottom where they find Mayrina in a cage. For this battle, Karlach goes into owlbear form and Shadowheart Tiger. lae'zel stays in caster mode to play backup. Karlach jumps on top of Auntie and she summons all the guards from earlier into the battle. Then Auntie Ethel sets the cage with Mayrina on fire. Karlach goes into full damage mode on Auntie while lae'zel tosses a bottle of water to put out the fire. Shadowheart also leaps down to get a smack on Auntie. Auntie Ethel tries to trick them by splitting into a bunch of illusory clones, but she forgot that owlbears have an AoE leap attack, I guess. Finding the real Auntie easily, Karlach keeps up the pressure. lae'zel takes out some of the clones with a big ice storm as well. The battle rages on as Shadowheart takes down the guards and Karlach focuses fire on Auntie Ethel. When Ethel is very close to death, she decides to call a timeout and approaches lae'zel, as she is the only one available who can speak. But lae'zel is not feeling particularly merciful at the moment, and no promises of power from a hag would be enough to sway her. So the battle continues, and Karlach finishes the job with a powerful strike from her bear claws. At the end, Mayrina is very upset that her big plan to resurrect her husband fell apart, but maybe she should have tried going to Withers instead of a hag. Two of the guards survived the battle. One seems thoroughly insane as he keeps insisting Auntie is just sleeping, but the other managed to keep her wits. Maybe we will run into her again later. Outside, the team sees Mayrina again. Karlach pulls out a wand she found inside the hag's lair and determines it's meant to bring Mayrina's husband back. Except, it brings him back as a mindless zombie. So Mayrina walks off with her zombie husband shambling towards Baldur's Gate. Definitely, there will be more to this story once we get to the city. With that distraction out of the way, everybody returns to the Shadowlands and the only area they haven't explored yet, the Thorm family mausoleum. They go in through the back and find a platform that goes down into an area with stonework suspiciously similar to Grimforge. At the bottom, Shadowheart immediately recognizes this place as the Gauntlet of Shar, an infamous training ground for Dark Justiciars in the Sharan faith. Knowing this is her deal, Karlach lets Shadowheart take the lead, but it doesn't take long for her to mess up and trigger a deadly trap. Using a ring that protects against being blinded, Shadowheart uses Misty Step to get to where she needs to go and disables the trap, allowing the team to move forward. Not long after, they run into a group of skeletons with a particularly foul mouth, and then some shades of Dark Justiciars start appearing out of dark portals and attacking them. They take them down easily enough, then move into the next room, and the exact situation happens again. But this time, Karlach and Shadowheart have no more wild shape charges. Whoopsie, good thing lae'zel can still transform. Flying around as a raven helps a lot with clearing out the portals, while Karlach and Shadowheart use magic to beat the enemies. After the battle, the puppet master behind all the skeletons finally shows his face, Ketheric Thorm's right-hand man, Balthazar the Necromancer. He tasks them with finding the relic that Ketheric is after, somewhere in the gauntlet, essentially passing his work onto them. For now, Karlach decides to play nice and keep in this guy's good graces, at least until she can identify what it is they're looking for down here. Using that handy-dandy scroll of knock found like 20 minutes ago, Karlach opens a very tough DC locked door and finds a super good ring. Now, this ring enables a powerful build that has been sort of sitting in the chest this whole time incomplete, but now it finally works. Since Druid doesn't have any native radiant damage other than Moonbeam, all of the radiant damage enabling effects don't really work. Moonbeam doesn't work because it doesn't count as a damage source coming from the player. So finally, with this Callous Glow Ring, Druid can do native radiant damage, and this enables all sorts of shenanigans, using the Luminous Armor, the Coruscation Ring, the Gloves of the Belligerent Sky, and the Boots of Stormy Clamor. Suddenly, Shadowheart has a very powerful build out of nowhere, thanks to this one little trinket. Now, both Shadowheart and lae'zel have powerful tricks they can make use of while in caster mode, while Karlach is mostly still living that owlbear life. Owlbear is just too strong to pass up. By the way, thanks to the Callous Glow Ring and Sunbeam from the Blood of Lathander, which I totally forgot that I had, I was able to finally destroy the Necromancy of Thay. Bet nobody remembered I left that little quest dangling, did they? Exploring the Gauntlet of Shar, Shadowheart starts doing the trials. She insists on doing them all alone, so Karlach and lae'zel patiently wait outside each trial room. The Soft Step trial is a test of stealth, and Shadowheart is not great at stealth. She gets caught again, and again, and again, and again. But since there is no real penalty to being caught, she just tries again until she finally gets the key in hand and makes it to the locked door at the end, finishing the trial. Karlach and lae'zel wake up from their nap and follow Shadowheart next door to the next one. Next is the Self-Same trial. This one requires a Sharan to prove their prowess in combat against themselves. So Shadowheart begins the trial and sneaks up to the top, but fails the perception roll to see her foe. Assuming it must be in the general vicinity of the teleporty thingy, she uses Create Water to drag it out of hiding and goes to work. Clone Shadowheart goes down surprisingly easily though, since it lost a turn to Surprise, so some quick lightning magic does the job. Moving along to the next area, the team go down the stairs to the next level below. The final trial is the Faith Leap trial. For this one, Shadowheart borrows a special ring that lae'zel is holding onto, the Eversight ring, as well as the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. Using these, Shadowheart is able to cross the area with several casts of Misty Step, ignoring the darkness that would normally prevent such a strategy. The rewards for each of these trials were baubles used to gain access to an elevator deeper in the gauntlet, but they aren't done collecting things just yet. Next door to the Faith Leap trial is the Silent Library, and this room is a multi-tiered area filled with Dark Justiciar shadows, as well as a portal that both summons more dudes, as well as casts a giant area of silence around it. So all three of our girls go into wild shape before entering the room and go to work clawing and pecking these shades to death. It should come as no surprise that Karlach does the most work here, but Shadowheart holds her own as Saber-toothed Tiger can actually output a lot of damage, but Raven is woefully lacking these days. Hopefully she gets a replacement soon. After clearing this room out, Shadowheart answers the riddle of the night. What can silence the night song? The answer? A tome called The Night Singer, found on a nearby shelf. The reward is a very important looking spear called the Spear of Night, which Shadowheart carries with her, as well as some Dark Justiciar equipment that are going straight to vendor. There is just one item left to find in the Gauntlet of Shar, one more of those little purple baubles needed to proceed. So the team head to the one place they haven't checked yet. On the way there, they see a suspicious looking displacer beast patrolling the corridors, and it runs off as they approach. Karlach senses something infernal as she approaches the displacer beast. She knows a devil is nearby, so she goes in alone to spare her friends the danger. When she enters the room, she encounters Yurgir, an Orthon waiting in ambush, and clearly the thing Raphael warned them about. Yurgir smells the infernal engine in Karlach's heart, and Karlach is curious if this guy knows anything that can help her. But before she can get any answers, Yurgir smells the presence of Raphael, and the topic immediately changes to him. Karlach is no friend of Raphael's, so she decides to parley with this guy instead. She learns that Raphael forced Yurgir into a contract and sealed it with a song. The song left a secret loophole that prevented Yurgir from getting out of it. After convincing Yurgir to let her search for a solution, he skeptically lets her go with a threat of death if she fails. Also, one of the Maragons weirdly falls from the top level and hurts itself for no reason. So Karlach gathers her team and heads out one last time into the Gauntlet. Some suspicious rats have been threatening her this whole time, and she suspects they're connected to this. Following the flood of rats down the halls, they lead everyone to the foot of the statue of Shar, where a whole menagerie of rats are gathered. Well, rats aren't particularly good at getting past damaging floor effects, so they all pop a spike growth down in the pit and let the battles begin. Most of the rats are killed instantly as soon as they spawn in, but some find some holes that let them get up above, and so those ones get the indignity of being tossed back down into the hole. After killing what seems like 100 rats, finally the last one shows up and transforms into a human, a Dark Justiciar named Lurthindor. And this fight was weird. Lurthindor was trapped in between worlds, like he was stuck out of phase with reality. It was like an episode of Star Trek or something. In the moments he was in phase with our reality, the team could give him a little smack, but all the phasing in and out made it impossible to enter submenus on the hotbar for some reason, so magic was a no-go. It took a long time, many standard attacks and attempts to shove, but finally lae'zel lands a shove that knocks Lurthindor off the edge and into the spikes below. Fatality. Though his body transported back up top, so that's convenient, I guess. With the last Dark Justiciar dead, Karlach returns to Yurgir and hears that the contract has ended. He can no longer hear the song. But Raphael appears to rain on his parade, saying he was actually in breach of contract, since the rule was he himself had to kill all the Dark Justiciars, so the last one didn't count. Yurgir is royally pissed off, but trapped in a corner, he agrees to Raphael's terms for a new contract and goes off to the House of Hope. Now free to pick up the last orb on the ground, the team have finally finished all the tasks in the Gauntlet and head down to open the lock. Putting all the orbs in place and riding an elevator down, Shadowheart approaches the point of no return, the entrance to the Shadowfell. Shadowheart takes a moment to pray to Shar before entering, and they all go inside, with an ominous warning that the state of the game will change after this choice. Good thing we did basically everything that can be done. The only quest that failed is the one with the dowry in Walking's Rest, and full disclosure, I only didn't finish that because every single member of the party failed their perception check, so the dowry was impossible to get anyway. Oh well. Balthazar came to gloat as the team entered the Shadowfell. He followed them down, letting them clear the way. Karlach has no intention of letting this guy live, but he floats away, sure of his victory should they get into a fight. Shadowheart leads the party down deep into the Shadowfell, jumping from ledge to ledge and approaching a large island at the bottom. When they get to the bottom, the team makes some preparations, summoning allies, going into wild shape, getting into position, and when they go down to start the conversation with Balthazar, he immediately goes hostile, because Karlach is an owlbear. No diplomacy, it seems. Balthazar is a powerful magic user, but even he is easily overwhelmed by a puddle of water and some lightning. Hilariously, he also took like over half his max HP and damage from Psionic Backlash, which I've never seen it do that much before. As far as I can tell, he isn't weak to psychic damage, so not sure why it was so strong, but big ouch for Big Balfi. He is finally finished off by an ice storm, which also takes many of his skeleton minions with him. The remaining enemies are no match for the powerful magic and bear claws they're up against, so it is just a matter of time before the battle is won. After the battle, Shadowheart speaks to the Aasimar chained up on the island and discovers this is the so-called Night Song they have been hearing so much about. And it is her sworn duty as a Sharan to slay the Night Song in order to become a Dark Justiciar. But she is conflicted. The Night Song indicates that she knows about Shadowheart and who she really is. That and all the little things over the course of the journey create a hesitation in Shadowheart, and ultimately she tosses the spear away without even a persuasion check. Freeing the Night Song from her bonds, the path is now set. Shadowheart has left the embrace of Shar forever and become a pariah in the process. Night Song flies off with her restored divine power and alerts everybody outside that the time to fight is nigh. Now, the team must rally at Moonrise Towers and finally put Ketheric Thorm to rest. The towers are a scene of chaos and death as flaming fists, harpers, cultists, and undead are strewn about near burning patches of holy fire. Jaheira is waiting outside to greet them, and they confirm the plan: storm the front gate and take control of the first floor of the tower. And so another massive battle begins, with 20 or more combatants on either side. Shadowheart tries to open up with some water, but Zarel is ready with a counterspell. Well, one haste potion later, and Shadowheart tries again, this time uninterrupted. lae'zel then follows up as usual with a giant ice storm, dealing a ton of damage to the forces on the ground, as well as creating a giant ice surface. And this is where the comedy of errors begins. Basically every turn, someone tries to move or jump or take an action, and they slippy fall down. This continues for quite some time, with so many lost turns due to slipping on the ice, but eventually the party and their allies defeat all the cultists. Some Harpers died in the battle, but Jaheira survives and swears to hold the fort on this floor while Karlach and co go upstairs to defeat Ketheric. And so they do, and do battle on the roof against Ketheric and an army of Skelemen. Karlach makes no attempt to talk down Ketheric. She's ready to brawl and take this guy down. When the battle starts, lae'zel activates the Shriek from her sword to increase damage output for everybody else. Then she runs forward to catch as many targets in range as she can. Karlach smushes some skellies, then runs up to take on the big man himself. She gets a few smacks, then Shadowheart jumps up to get some hits in herself, successfully shredding his armor a bit. Summons focus on the other targets in the battle, then Aelin flies in and lobs some smites at Ketheric. She does so much damage with one hit, thanks to the Shriek from lae'zel, that Ketheric immediately retreats. But he takes Aelin with him using a colossal tentacle from the depths of the tower. Cleanup is no big deal once Ketheric is gone, so they slowly but surely wipe out all the skeletons with no issue. Jaheira comes up and has a chat, and Karlach considered taking a quick long rest before going down the hole, but decides to risk it. They jump down the stinky gooey shaft and enter the next area, the Mind Flayer colony. Down here, the halls are filled with intellect devourers, which are easy pickings for our team. They give an inordinately high amount of XP for something so easy, and including the room full of them with the bugbear Chop, it gets the team to level 10. They free a strangely familiar intellect devourer from a cage. It is the same one they fought with on the Nautiloid. Now with us back in the party, lae'zel adds it to her summon roster. Level 10. The biggest thing here is improved Wild Strike, which is basically triple attack for wild shapes. There are also new cantrips and spells here. Karlach and Shadowheart take Thorn Whip and lae'zel Guidance. For spells, Karlach takes Wall of Fire, lae'zel Create Water, and Shadowheart Contagion. And finally, at level 10, lae'zel finally gets a new wild shape form, the Dilophosaurus. Compared to the Raven, this thing has a serious lack of mobility, but the damage increase is substantial, as it does acid damage on every attack. Now lae'zel has some real damage potential going into the next big battle, a room full of undead monsters. This room was pretty tough, actually. There are so many targets that it is difficult to keep them all under wraps, and many of them deal high damage. The zombies have additional necrotic damage on all of their attacks, for example. The highest priority target to kill first is the Death Shepherd in the center, as it can revive other undead around the room to drag the battle out longer. After that, the Winged Horrors are the scariest, as they can paralyze with their attacks, which results in several lost turns and dead summons. But in the end, the impressive AoE damage from Karlach and high single target damage from Shadowheart and lae'zel get the job done. After the battle, Shadowheart does the weird mind puzzle and picks up the Pickled Brain reward, then uses it to get the effect Githzerai Mind Barrier by sticking it in a bald elf head. Wandering the halls, the team take down all the encounters in the place with little issue, including a party of Merkle worshippers, tons of intellect devourers, and a group of mind flayers that were in some pods. After defeating the mind flayers, they speak to Zevlor and hear what really happened with him in the Shadowlands. He goes on his way, and everybody gathers up at the end to prepare for the final battle. Conveniently, one of the restoration pods from the Nautiloid is around that gives a free long rest. When they open the door to the innermost chamber, they witness Ketheric communing with his accomplices, one of which is someone Karlach recognizes, Gortash, the man who sold her to Zariel and caused her to suffer for a decade in Avernus. Gortash and the very sickly-looking lady with him discuss their evil plans with Ketheric, which turns out involves keeping an Elder Brain under mind control with magic rocks. They run off with the Elder Brain, beginning the march of the Absolute's armies toward the city of Baldur's Gate, but Ketheric stays behind. His job is still to kill Karlach and take away the artifact that she is carrying, so Karlach goes straight in with no fear. This is going to be fun. Ketheric in the Mind Flayer colony is what we call in the honor mode business a run killer. The biggest reason is that unlike many other battles in this game, you cannot escape if things start going wrong. This room is sealed as soon as you enter, so you either win or you get game over and your save file is lost. However, I was not at all worried about this one, because unlike many other runs I've had in honor mode, I knew that a party of druids were uniquely qualified to win this battle. Let me explain how. First phase is mostly cleanup of all the ads in the room, with the Mind Flayer being highest priority, as well as freeing Aelin from her soul cage. Typically, getting to Aelin and freeing her is Scratch's job, as he is the only summon that can use the help command, but the Mind Flayer takes him right out. With Scratch out of commission, one of the main party would have to do it, so freeing her is put down in priority until the rest of the ads are dead. Once everything else in the room is dead, everybody gathers up around Ketheric and deal what little damage they can to whittle him down. He has pretty high AC, so there are a lot of missed turns, and when he goes off with attacks, he can take someone out of Wild Shape in one turn. But that's just fine. Wild Shape will not be necessary in the next phase anyway. Somehow, Us is the one that manages to get the final hit that pushes Ketheric to his next form with a critical synaptic discharge. Ketheric refuses to go down quietly and surrenders his body to his god Myrkul, then comes back as an enormous skeleton. This is where the fun begins. The Apostle of Myrkul shares initiative with Ketheric from the previous phase, so his first turn is actually after everybody else's. Aelin comes in and does a pretty hefty smite on him, once again backed up by Shriek from lae'zel. Shadowheart then lays down a moonbeam, followed by a wall of fire from lae'zel. Karlach gets a couple attacks in owlbear form before she dismisses Wild Shape. Then she uses a haste potion so she can lay down a wall of fire as well, though looking at the damage log it may not have been effective. Probably multiple instances of Wall of Fire don't stack. When Myrkul gets his turn, he swings his scythe at the Dryad Summon. Good choice, guy. She was really threatening you. It should be noted that all these stacked up area effect spells deal damage to Myrkul every turn, which is draining his HP very quickly. On the next turn, Karlach adjusts from using Wall of Fire to using Moonbeam, and even uses an extra action to relocate it, double dipping on damage. Many of the summons still alive are busy cleaning up necromites before they can spawn by smacking their little pods on the ground. lae'zel uses an ice storm, the result of which is that now Myrkul is sitting at around 100 HP remaining. Aelin gets some damage in, and once more the team gets to act. Karlach pulls the same maneuver again, double dipping her moonbeam on Myrkul, then lae'zel drops one more ice storm. Now, Myrkul is at just around 50 HP, and once his turn begins, he gets hit down to 19 from the residual damage effects. This is low enough that Aelin can fly in and finish him off, after he wastes his turn smacking us instead of someone that matters. Ketheric is now well and truly defeated. Aelin uses a classic Mortal Kombat style head-smashing fatality on him. I bet she will be DLC in the next season pass. Karlach thinks about what she has just learned. Gortash is involved in this plot, and he is a worshipper of the evil god Bane. Karlach isn't about to let him live after all the suffering she went through at his hands. She fumes, but then she calms herself so she can get out of here. Then the Dream Visitor comes out of the Astral Prism somehow, and explains that the glowy stone in his armor is what allows him to control the brain. So now the team have some MacGuffins to look for in Act 3. Finally, some real direction. Up in the towers, several characters have gathered to congratulate the team on their victory. First up is Withers, who is cryptic as usual, but seems to know a lot about the three gods the bad guys are worshipping. Next is Jaheira, who offers to join the party. Karlach lets her head to camp for now. Aelin is nearby, who is hanging out with Moon Cleric Isabel. It turns out, Isabel is actually Ketheric's estranged daughter, and Aelin is her lover. So that was a weird family reunion, I guess. Karlach also checked in with Halsin, who confirms the curse is finally coming to an end. Then, she spoke to Alfira and the Tiefling kids, who are still worried about Maul, but no sign of where she got off to yet. And finally, Barkus and Wulbren, setting the stage for some gnomish activities in the city. The team leave the towers and head to camp, where Shadowheart finally speaks to Aelin about her past. She learns she was a Selenite, whose parents were attacked and kidnapped by Sharans before being taken in to be brainwashed. Her parents are still alive, presumably held prisoner in the Sharan Conclave in Baldur's Gate. Shadowheart now feels galvanized about what she needs to do next, find her parents and get her revenge. And Karlach is going to support her every step of the way. Finally, the team depart the shadow-cursed lands, cursed no more, as the land begins to heal itself as dawn breaks. After all the smashing business they got up to in the Shadow-Cursed lands, Karlach and team have finally made it to Baldur's Gate. The road from escaping the Hells has been a long one, but this isn't the end of the line. The real fight is here, in the city itself. There are two big bads waiting with little shiny rocks that need pilfering, one of which is the supervillain arch-nemesis of our protagonist, soon-to-be Archduke Gortash. But it isn't just Karlach with troubles. lae'zel is questioning her faith in Lich Queen Vlaakith, and Kithrak Voss is waiting for her to come join his rebellion. Shadowheart has forsaken her dark goddess Shar and learned her parents are still being held captive in the city. Now they have a new member, Jaheira, the legendary High Harper, who has a quest of her own to complete on the city streets. And so, in this last leg of the journey, we follow Karlach as she navigates helping her companions with their troubles, as well as destroying the Cult of the Absolute. Let's get right into the chaotic and emotional finale of BG3 Druid Angels. Before we get into the story, a little bit of housekeeping, since Act 3 brings a few shakeups to the party. First, as mentioned in the intro, Jaheira is an official member of the party now. That brings our party size up to 4. 4 moon druids wild shaping all over town. Now, I already got some comments to this effect in previous videos, but the plan has always been to make the party a fighting Myrmidon team in the last act. So, to that effect, some respecs are in order, mostly because Tavern Brawler actually does not have any effect on most of the Myrmidon attacks. I didn't realize this at the time when I was doing this initial respec, but actually Tavern Brawler does work for Earth Myrmidon, just in case someone wanted to know that. So here are the assignments. You could probably already guess how I'm going to do this because it's pretty obvious. First, Karlach, our fiery friend. I couldn't ask for a better choice for her than Fire Myrmidon. It has haste, it has burn, it has proficiency bonus on its attacks. Chef's kiss. Next, let's talk about lae'zel. So far, lae'zel has had a bit of an eclectic array of wild shapes. First, Badger. Thankfully, that was short-lived. Next, Dire Raven, where she spent most of her career. And finally, Dilophosaurus for just the duration of the Mind Flayer colony. Well, if any of those seem to align best with lae'zel, it would have to be Raven, so I went for an air theme for her going forward. lae'zel is going to be the Air Myrmidon, which I honestly think is the most powerful one anyway. It has day-long invisibility, lightning damage on attacks, and can stun with its attacks too. The crowd control is just nuts. Next, we move on to Shadowheart. Really, I thought that Water Myrmidon worked best for her because her traditional role is Cleric, and Water is the most healy of the Myrmidons. But I do think it works out anyway because the Water Myrmidon has pretty strong trident attacks with additional ice damage, so that means she graduated from Saber-Toothed Tiger in Act 2, the highest DPS animal wild shape at the time, to now Water Myrmidon, which also has pretty high damage per strike. And finally, Jaheira. Again, there really isn't a better option for her than Earth Myrmidon. She's the only one of the group that is actually normally a druid by default, so she has a strong affinity for nature baked into her character. Earth Myrmidon has some quirks to it. First, it doesn't use a weapon, so as previously mentioned, Tavern Brawler actually works here. Second, it can't fly. This is actually a little bit of a nuisance since that means areas with a lot of platforming, such as the Astral Prism, are much more difficult for her to traverse. And it also has an ability that doesn't cost an action, only movement speed, but makes her significantly more tanky. So that means Jaheira will probably do a lot of frontlines tanking as Earth Myrmidon during combat. Since she is new to the party and we haven't discussed her role yet, I looked over the gear available and what hasn't really been covered as a party role and landed on Healer for her. She will still have the default super strong druid spells like Moonbeam and Call Lightning, but I mostly loaded her up with healing abilities and the buff on heal equipment. But that will only come into play occasionally anyway, since most of the time they will be fighting in wild shape. Okay, that was a lot to go over. It actually took me almost an hour real time to respec the whole party. But now that everybody's all set up, Karlach goes to bed for the night and thinks about how she will proceed with her quest in the city. I chose Karlach's unique option here, which basically is just kill Gortash. Very fitting. As soon as Karlach finally starts to doze off, suddenly waves of mental attacks start coming at her, and the astral prism flies around haywire. Then, a portal opens and several angry-looking naked Githyanki come out. This is a lot all at once, guys. Karlach sees the portal as an escape from this horrible situation and sprints past all these Gith weirdos to get in there as fast as possible. Fortunately, doing so brings everybody else in with her. Lucky break, that. The inside of the astral prism is also a mess. Githyanki assailants murdering brain cats left and right, punching holes in giant floating skulls. Just no chill whatsoever. lae'zel is suspiciously quiet during this whole sequence as well. Anyway, our girls spring into action by finally trying out their new shapes. This is where I noticed Jaheira can't fly. Ugh. But they take out the first couple Gith in the way with no issues and head down toward the heart of the commotion, the giant skull. There, Karlach finds a mind flayer getting his ass rocked by a punk Githyanki lady, and he immediately announces himself as an ally. The bombshell is dropped. This squid monster is actually the dream visitor that has been protecting them the whole journey. He proves it by listing a bunch of Karlach's achievements until now. Ego properly stroked, Karlach decides to hear this guy out and protect him. If he is the Dream Visitor, and the Dream Visitor protects them from the Absolute, who knows what might happen if she lets him die. The battle is against 4 Githyanki monks. They usually start out by focusing down the brain cats before working on the party. However, one of them takes a very enticing opportunity to one-hit kill Karlach. She jumps down off her floating rock and uses Fist of Unbroken Air, launching Karlach straight off into the abyss. Roughly 30 seconds into this fight and someone's already dead. There is a little bit of a learning curve getting used to the Myrmidon forms compared to animal forms. The Mind Flayer helps out a little bit with a Mind Blast that takes 2 of the enemies out of commission for a turn. After a few turns of combat, Jaheira decides to get Karlach back up, so she drops Wild Shape and uses a Scroll of Revivify. Karlach, unfortunately, doesn't have any actions to take when she comes back, so she has to skip the turn and hope for the best. The battle is mostly under control by this point though, as there are only 2 targets left and the Mind Flayer friend is actually doing work keeping them stunned. I found it pretty funny that one of the monks missed 3 attacks in a row against Jaheira. It's not like she's got a super tanky build, just good luck I guess. In the last turn, the battle ends when the Mind Flayer finally pulls out his big spell and uses Chain Lightning. Took him long enough. Once combat is over, the Mind Flayer tries to keep emotions under control by calmly explaining who he is and what is going on. The angry-looking Githyanki in chains over there, that is Orpheus, the supposedly long-dead Prince of the Comet, and the reason the Mind Flayer can protect them from the Absolute is him and his superpower to disrupt illithid hive minds. The Mind Flayer introduces himself as the Emperor and gives a lengthy backstory. After exhausting all the information he is willing to give, the Emperor has one last gift, an astral-touched tadpole. This allows members of the party to evolve, or allow themselves to become partially illithid, closer to the perfection the Emperor has, but still human. Karlach thinks it over and decides she's willing to give this a try. See, anybody who has used Karlach in their endgame party probably knows, but she always offers to become illithid in the final boss rush. This mostly comes down to Karlach's days are numbered anyway, with her failing mechanical heart, so what is there to lose by becoming a Mind Flayer? If it protects the people she cares about, she's fine taking on this burden. However, Karlach will take the burden on alone, and therefore no other party member will become partial illithid in this run. After leaving the astral prism, Karlach quickly picks lae'zel's brain about Orpheus and how she feels, and lae'zel is totally on board with the prince. They go back to bed and get ready to enter the city the next day. In the morning, there's one more minor surprise. Shadowheart got a haircut. Personally, I think this suits her better anyway. Now, it's time to enter Act 3 proper and begin questing in the town of Rivington. Immediately upon entering the town, Karlach encounters a hungry little girl with a cat. She gives a sob story about her sick mom disappearing a 10-day ago, and Karlach falls for it hook, line, and sinker. She does some Goodberry stuff, which is weird because I never run that spell on my list, and the girl runs off satisfied. There is a commotion just across the street, so Karlach heads over to see what the hubbub is about. A poor family of refugees is claiming squatters' rights on the mostly empty house of a rich toy maker. This guy wants them gone, but he's also pretty hard to sympathize with when he's threatening them with violence from some obvious hired mercenaries. Karlach uses a rare Druid intimidation check, and thanks to a recent tadpole upgrade, she now has a huge bonus to charisma checks. After scaring off the rich owner, the mercenaries are angry they missed out on a payday, so they try to threaten Karlach, but again, intimidation wins the day. How could anybody not run off in fear when they see this horned menace scowling at them? Sniffing that something is off about how persistent that guy was to get these squatters off his property, Shadowheart does some snooping in the basement, and she finds some incriminating evidence that this innocent toy maker has been doing something nefarious to the teddy bears. She stuffs that in her back pocket while Karlach does some shopping with a merchant down the road. She buys his excellent bow that gives a fat bonus to initiative, and then Shadowheart comes down and rejoins the group. The merchant changes his tune quite a bit when he locks eyes on Shadowheart. It turns out this guy is a member of the Sharan Church in the lower city, and they have been on high alert looking out for Shadowheart. Somehow they all know she forsook Shar, and now she's a fugitive. But he isn't here to start a fight. In fact, he does the party a solid by straight up telling Shadowheart where to find the Sharan Cloister. Thanks, bro? I'm sure you won't regret that decision at all. Not a chance. Shadowheart informs Karlach about the dangerous teddy bears, so they investigate the barn where the toys are being donated. The guard lets them in, and they inspect the toys, only to have them explode on contact. Well, I guess better us than innocent children. There will certainly be some words exchanged with this Arthur fellow in the near future, once Karlach grows her eyebrows back. Around back of the barn, Karlach talks to a flaming fist, only for him to start saying some extremely suspicious, violent things. Turns out, this is Orin the Red, one of the two bosses of this leg of the adventure. She loves a good jump scare, so her favorite pastime is to disguise herself as random civilians and say ultra-violent, creepy things, then transform into her normal zombie lady self, for the lulz. Well, now that they are well acquainted, Karlach moseys on to her next destination, the main drag in town. Here, she finds the dog kennel belonging to one Sword Coast Couriers, a mail service, and the kennel is run by extreme bitch Angry Maria. I mean, you can't really blame her for acting this way when her parents named her Angry, can you? Turns out Scratch, the bestest boy in all of Faerun, is an employee of this courier, but he is clearly not down to clown with coming back to work here. He got a much better offer with Karlach. So she does some more druidic intimidation to get the kennel mistress to back down on her claim of ownership, and then does it again to get her to leave the kennel altogether, to which the other dogs are extremely grateful. Good riddance. A little ways up the street is the entrance to the extraplanar circus. Karlach is always ready for a good bit of fun, so she tries to get inside, only for the ghoul at the gate to say she stinks. That's pretty uncool, dude. Karlach took a shower today. Probably. Once again, intimidation wins the day, and she gets to go inside despite this little setback. In the circus, Karlach and Shadowheart take a love test with a dryad, and this goes poorly. Turns out I forgot all the answers to this, and Shadowheart walks off in a huff. Whoops. I don't think it affected my approval rating at all, though, especially because immediately after the test ends, the dryad pulls another head-snapping transformation, and it turns out it was Orin all along. Shadowheart is content to chalk this whole affair up to Orin trolling and not hold the disaster against Karlach. Karlach goes to visit an old favorite show of hers, the comedic stylings of Dribbles the Clown.
Because with him, anything is possible. Hey!
What? Shut up.
And what luck, he invites her on stage to participate in the act, the dream of a young Baldurian girl. Then he starts saying some weird things about being special or whatever, and then Bitey Buddy, bites her. This isn't really going like she hoped it would. Dribbles whips out a clown hammer and combat starts. This is a good opportunity for the group to really test out how strong the Myrmidons are. There are 3 doppelgangers, including Dribbles himself, and then a few animals. It basically takes just a single turn for a Myrmidon to slaughter any given target, which means this battle ends extremely quickly and with no casualties whatsoever. Usually at least one civilian gets killed by Bitey Buddy or something, but not this time. After wiping out the doppelgangers, Karlach speaks to the owner of the circus and is tasked with finding where the real Dribbles went, and this is the last time this quest will be mentioned. One more major thing to do in Rivington, Karlach enters the church. They are in the middle of a murder investigation. Or they were, I guess, since the lead investigator Valeria just declared case closed and flew off to get drunk. The head sister is not at all satisfied with this result though, and tasks Karlach with finding the real killer. So Karlach does some digging and goes into the cellar. There, she discovers a secret passage, and behind it, more doppelgangers. They went down extremely easily, and then investigating the area, Karlach finds both the real murder weapon, a unique dagger called Stillmaker, and an unusually shaped flowery key. I guess this murder investigation is still pretty open after all. Before passing into Worm's Crossing, there's a side path leading down to the beach. On the way down there, the team are completely torn apart by a particularly brutal trap. To think after all these one-sided battles recently, a trap could do this much damage. After recovering from that little incident, they continue on only to find two groups of criminals about to go to war with each other. Jaheira has no dialogue in this scene, but since in meta-knowledge I know this is part of her quest and that ultimately she sides with the guild, I decided to use that to make my choice here. So Karlach pledges to help the guild in this battle, and they begin battle with the enemy, a group following a mysterious new guy on the scene by the name of the Stone Lord.
You picked the wrong side, cook.
For this one, the girls primarily rely on their magic, just to test how much they can do as casters instead of myrmidons, and boy, they really take care of business, except for one little hiccup where lae'zel loses concentration on Insect Plague thanks to Magic Missile. It is completely one-sided, and the Stone Lord team is dropped effortlessly. Moving back up to the main road, Karlach approaches the checkpoint leading into Worm's Crossing. This is where she has her first fateful encounter with a Steel Watcher, a hulking automaton guard that patrols the streets and eradicates criminal scum, basically RoboCop. When Karlach is examined by the Steel Watcher, it strangely misidentifies her as a defective model. When she denies being a Steel Watcher, it lets her by. Weird, but some gnomes come out and throw a flashbang at the thing anyway, so I guess everything was going to turn out fine either way. Karlach follows the escaping gnomes into a cave where she encounters the remnants of the Iron Hands that she has been rescuing consistently the whole journey. Barkus is hanging around in the room in the back with Wulbren, and he is very nervous that something bad is about to go down. When Karlach approaches Wulbren, the plan is finally revealed. This guy has been building WMDs in this little rinky-dink cellar. He has a rune powder bomb, and he wants Karlach to place it in the Steel Watch Foundry in the lower city to disable all the Steel Watchers at once. But of course, just blowing up a quarter of the city isn't the most precise way of dealing with the problem. A lot of innocent people will be killed. So Karlach gladly takes the bomb as a last resort, but agrees to find a more diplomatic solution to the problem, or at least a less devastating one. Back in Worm's Crossing, Karlach takes the key she found and investigates the presumed source for it, Frago's Flophouse. In the loft, there is a wardrobe with a locked door in the back, and the key opens it, revealing a hidden chamber, very clearly the secret lair of a serial killer. And while looking through his collection of body parts and incriminating manifestos, they find a bloodstain, coming from a corpse stashed under the bed. This corpse belongs to a dwarf by the name of Fionn. Well, at least she was found by someone.
Expert, but I don't think vampire spawn should be able to do that.
Across the street at the brothel, the proprietress mentions one of her best employees is a female dwarf by the same name, so it seems only right to report the details of her demise. Also in this brothel, Karlach manages to squeeze the location of the guild hideout from some lackeys who are really not hiding their obvious criminal behavior very well. And then she runs into Arthur, the toy maker. Karlach is extremely pissed at this guy. Who seriously blows up little kids? I mean, there are evil plots, but that is really evil. She gets the location of the people who put him up to this, then sends him to prison to await justice. Probably. Or maybe he will just get offed by the bad guys. That seems likely too. Up the stairs, Karlach runs into Valeria, the weird elephant fairy thing that was investigating the murder in the church. She shows the murder weapon and the list found in the serial killer lair. This shitey little elephant is too lazy to do any actual work, so Karlach is given a pass to the lower city and tasked with continuing the investigation, with an inspector working the case. Finally, there is one last person waiting here in the brothel to talk to Karlach, Raphael. He is upstairs in a room specially reserved for him, and he is talking with another notable character, Kithrak Voss. Voss is after something that will help him save the Githyanki people from the tyranny of Vlaakith, and Raphael is not in the mood to bargain with him, but he is very ready to bargain with Karlach. Too bad Karlach has no interest in dealing with devils of any kind.
Raphael explains what it is that he has and what he wants. He will trade the Orphic Hammer, a means to free Orpheus from the Astral Prism, for the Crown of Karsus, which is the artifact controlling the Elder Brain. Karlach just straight up refuses, no discussion. She really dislikes this guy. But since lae'zel was weirdly stuck in the geometry back across the street, she didn't participate in the exchange. But after getting her back over, Karlach tells lae'zel what went down. They now know how to free the Prince of the Comet, they just need a way to steal it. They talk to Voss back downstairs and tell him the same. They refused Raphael's bargain, but have every intention to get that hammer one way or another. The next stop in Worm's Crossing is a local shop by the name of Dantalon's Dancing Axe, and this one is for Jaheira. She knows it to be a regular meeting place for harpers, so she instructed Karlach to head here early on to make contact with the local harpers in the city and take stock of the situation. Karlach introduces herself to the proprietor, and then they head downstairs to the harper meeting underway. One of the young harpers here, Geraldus, is very nervous and spouting some nonsense about Seluna's tears. Jaheira catches on right away, and she drops a hint to Karlach about what it means. She mentions the name Marcus. In case somehow anybody forgot, Marcus was the winged dingus who attacked Last Light Inn and was essentially a sleeper agent for the Absolute. Karlach smells what Jaheira is stepping in and interprets that to mean, attack these fools, immediately. And doing so gets a surprise round. Lucky break, that. With the surprise round and the overwhelming force of some Myrmidons, these fake harpers last all of one round before they get soundly defeated. In the aftermath, Jaheira spills the beans on what just happened. Doppelgangers have infiltrated and probably eliminated all of the local harpers. Jaheira feels responsible because it was her who put them up to investigating the Absolute in her absence. But there is a bit more to the story here because she also reveals that she has been looking for someone with the harpers' assistance. That someone is none other than legendary Ranger Minsk from all the way back in BG1. She doesn't have much of a lead yet, but Karlach is all too happy to assist in finding another one of her childhood heroes, for the nostalgia value, of course. Finally done with all the house cleaning in Worm's Crossing, it was time to get inside the city, at last. Standing in the way is another checkpoint, but this time Karlach is prepared with a pass, one from Arthur and one from Valeria, take your pick. After crossing the drawbridge, a Steel Watcher once again stops Karlach, though this time things are a little different as Gortash himself takes control of the Steel Watcher to greet her. At first, he treats her the same as he would in any other playthrough, until Karlach has a chance to greet him back, with her typical love of expletives. Expect to see a lot of that word in the near future. It's fine because it's text in a video game, right? Karlach accepts his invitation to witness his inauguration as Archduke, truly the rise of a supervillain. When they finally meet face to face, Gortash is all smiles and pleasantries. Clearly, he doesn't feel the raging heat coming off of Karlach just seeing his handsome young face. For the most part, this spiel he gives here is the same as usual. The brain is growing restless, need all 3 stones, kill Ornn first and rule together, blah blah blah. But there is no way in hell Karlach would ever agree to this charade, not with him of all people. So Karlach comes out with the single best dialogue option in all of BG3. He takes this response in stride, gives the typical warning of a traitor in camp, explains the evil plan, and Karlach gets a few more licks in. Then the inauguration begins. And during the course of the inauguration ceremony is where things really fall apart. Because while I was committing to using all of Karlach's unique options where possible, who would have guessed one of them leads to the hardest encounter in the entire game? Choosing this option during the ceremony seems pretty innocuous, but don't be fooled. This initiates combat with the whole room, including like a dozen Steel Watchers. I was completely unprepared for this, obviously, and while I did make an attempt to fight, it didn't take me very long to realize this fight was absolutely not going to happen. Fortunately, I make the unintentionally very smart choice of getting Karlach to a safe place on the balcony during her first turn, which meant she was safe from all the violence. Karlach is the only one in the turn order to go before a whole gaggle of Steel Watchers, so I just had to watch on in horror as my team got decimated before they got a chance to react. After what feels like an eternity, Jaheira finally gets her turn. She does her damnedest to kill some dudes with a cone of cold, but it really doesn't do enough. She is downed shortly after by a big sword swipe, then killed shortly after that by some AoE damage aimed at Shadowheart, the last hit of which is an attack of opportunity. Oops. By the time lae'zel gets her turn, I knew this was impossible. So I beat a swift retreat with her, bringing her out to the same balcony as Karlach. When Karlach gets her turn, she takes out a lone guard on the floor below, then goes straight towards the entrance to the lower city to escape. With haste and Myrmidon flight, she manages to get far enough to trigger the escape prompt, guaranteeing that at least one of my party survived this massacre. Now with Karlach safe in camp, I let the battle play out. Shadowheart is the lone stalwart, facing down the army of Gortash completely solo. She tanks a surprising number of hits, to be honest, but it's only a matter of time before this never-ending supply of robots manage to shoot her to death. lae'zel really is pretty safe out on the balcony. Even the couple Steel Watchers that were smart enough to go out there oddly turn around without hitting her. Weird AI behavior. One monk gets a punch or two, but it isn't enough, and lae'zel kills him before flying to safety. Myrmidons have a very high amount of mobility with both flight and elemental warp. Now that lae'zel is safely out of range of any hostility, Karlach can go to work reviving her friends back in camp. So, while the battle still raged on in Worm's Rock Fortress, Karlach goes to Withers and asks him for a twofer of resurrections. The corpses of Shadowheart and Jaheira are teleported to safety back in camp and revived, while lae'zel sits on the bridge below the fortress waiting for her turn. The battle takes forever since there are approximately 1 million enemy combatants, but once lae'zel finally comes up in the turn order, she just flies a short distance away then flees combat. With that spectacle finally resolved, the team reconvenes in camp and licks their wounds. The result of angering the Steel Watch is that you get an effect called Pursuit Protocol for 20 turns. This basically just means any Steel Watch will be automatically hostile during the duration of the effect, but you can just run out the clock in camp with no penalty. After the battle is over, lae'zel uses her invisibility and flight to scout the interior of Worm's Rock and take stock of the situation. It is a mess of hostile threats. Every single character in the fortress is hostile, except one random merchant in the armory. However, flying back to Worm's Crossing gives some hope, as the guards and Steel Watch on that side are still yellow. This means the city itself should also be safe to travel to. And so, Karlach and the team decide now is not the time to take on Gortash, and that the Steel Watch need to be dealt with first, before trying this again. What a start to Act 3. Honestly, I couldn't have engineered a more dramatic event if I tried, and the game did it all for me. The city looks the same as always, so the battle really was contained just in Worm's Rock Fortress. This is good. Karlach can still move around and get things done without too much stress. Just in case, she pops into the nearby Flaming Fist compound at Basilisk Gate to see if they have a bounty out for her. This is when she notices a fiery-haired woman shouting at the clearly inebriated Fist, taking her statement. It turns out she had her daughter recently go missing from the local pub, but this guard is pretty far gone and isn't understanding a word of what she says. Karlach takes things into her own hands and offers to search for her daughter at the last place she was seen, the Blushing Mermaid. With that quest flagged, Karlach moves on to the nearest safe hideout, the Elf Song Tavern. The Emperor takes a moment to mention this was once a place he used as a base of operations in secret. In the tavern, Karlach finds some familiar faces, in the form of Lacrissa and Alfira, some tieflings from the Grove. Then, she goes up to the second level and finds the site of the murder of Duke Stelmane, where Inspector Devella is working. They share conspiracy theories about ballists, and Karlach agrees to investigate the remaining targets on the murder list to try and protect them, starting with the chef in this very tavern. When she approaches the head chef, he starts going on about some rats, clearly a task for level 1 adventurers, not level 10. But whatever, it's not like they can't end a few rats. Hilariously, the rats leveled up almost the whole party to level 11. Level 11 gives access to 6th level spells. For the most part, 6th level spells are pretty lackluster. Most of the time an upcasted spell with a 6th level spell slot is better. But notably, Druid has the spell Hero's Feast at this level, which is an incredibly strong party-wide, day-long buff. So Karlach grabs that, and everybody else just picks something pretty mediocre. Shadowheart doesn't have her level quite yet, but no biggie. There's a battle coming up that will get enough XP. The Emperor guides Karlach through the basement towards his hideout, behind a secret door. But then they hear the sound of the Quaneth, which means Githyanki hostiles are nearby. They summon the whole crew and head deeper inside to confront their Githyanki assailants. lae'zel took charge of the conversation and declared she wasn't going to take any crap from these guys, so combat begins. Myrmidons kinda wreck shop in this battle. The The guys in charge of summoning backup are taken out almost immediately. The leader of the crew is pretty easy to keep under wraps, and nobody else poses even a minor threat to wild-shaped myrmidons. This battle is probably the easiest Githyanki encounter in the game, since you're so strong by this point, but even so, it was surprisingly easy. Maybe druids are a little too strong? Shadowheart gets to level 11 like the others, and they enter the Emperor's hideout. After listening to him jabber on about his useless knickknacks for hours, they find a door that leads to the sewers. Karlach suddenly gets a strange idea. Poor Halsin hasn't gone out for a walk to go tinkles for quite some time. He probably needs to stretch his legs. So Karlach swaps him in and tells Jaheira to wait a few minutes while they go for a stroll in the sewers. With Halsin in the party, they approach the door deeper into the sewers when suddenly... Yenna? That weird, anemic girl from Rivington who ate Karlach's good berries? What is she doing here? Well, turns out this is Orin, yet again, and she reveals the person who is really a shapeshifter traitor in the camp is Yenna. Oh no, the betrayal. Orin had her kidnapped and started posing as her at some point. And if they ever want to see this stranger that they only spoke to once unharmed, they need to kill Gortash. Orin, you didn't need to kidnap some strange girl to convince Karlach to kill her arch-nemesis. Complete waste of effort. And there is no way that this sequence of events resulting in Yenna being the kidnapped victim was orchestrated at all. Not a chance. Anyway, with Halsin having his duty fulfilled, he's dumped back in camp and Jaheira joins back up. Now is a good time for a long rest to get all those spell slots and wild-shaped charges back. So Karlach ends the day, only for yet another interloper to show up in their newly purchased hotel suite, Vlaakith, the Lich Queen of the Githyanki. This is the last chance for lae'zel to declare her loyalty to Vlaakith, and lae'zel makes everybody proud by telling her goddess to go to hell. Vlaakith throws a hissy fit and disappears, and lae'zel has some feelings about everything, but ultimately she made the right decision, and literally everybody approved of it. While checking around the hotel suite, Karlach notices a familiar face lurking about, Yurgir, the Orthon from the Gauntlet of Shar. He has come to share some interesting information about his old enemy Raphael, that there is a Diabolist in the lower city capable of sneaking the crew into the House of Hope. Sounds like the crew has a new friend and a lead on how to get the Orphic Hammer without signing a damning contract with a smug devil. Down the street from the Elfsong Tavern is a bougie wine festival. Ordinarily, Karlach would have nothing to do with this sort of thing, but in this case, another of the targets on the murder list is running the event. When Karlach approaches, the lady of the house invites her to join them, to which the guy in charge of the event is obviously uncomfortable. Karlach gives a good long sniff and realizes the wine is poisoned, and I chose the dialogue option, which I assumed was sarcastic and would give me a chance to stop him. But nah, Karlach just swigs the wine along with the others and gets paralyzed like a dingus, which leads to Cora getting stabbed and killed. Not doing a very good job protecting the murder targets already. The culprit, a wannabe assassin by the name of Dolor, also came prepared with a scroll of Dimension Door and some doppelganger backup. So the scene turns into a quick battle against some doppelgangers, but they aren't really much trouble to deal with. After apologizing to the husband for her complete dereliction of duty, Karlach sulks away in shame. Following the path down, Karlach finds a flyer advertising something called the Anti-Hag Support Group. This might come in handy later. The next destination in the city is the Guild, which has its hideout very near here. The guard is all too happy to let Karlach in thanks to her actions on the beach against the Stone Lord army. So Karlach gets a free pass to the criminal underbelly. And who does she run into inside but Maul, the missing tiefling child from the battle at Last Light Inn in Act 2. I guess she managed to position herself as a member of the guild working a crime ring of her own. Good to see she's making a successful career. This is really the end of her story, though, weirdly. It feels like there should be more to this. Later in the House of Hope, you can find a little bit of evidence she made a deal with Raphael, but it doesn't go anywhere, so oh well. The goal of entering the guild is to speak to their leader, Nine Fingers Keen. Nine Fingers here is an old friend of Jaheira and was waiting to speak to her. During the conversation, she reveals that the Stone Lord, the same guy who has been building his own criminal empire to challenge the guild, is none other than the very same Minsk that Jaheira has been searching for. Jaheira finds this a little hard to believe, knowing what kind of man Minsk is, and offers to settle the matter herself, but Nine Fingers has no intention to let it go, and refuses to involve Jaheira in the operation to take down the Stone Lord. With Nine Fingers a bit of a dead end, Jaheira suggests asking around the guild for a lead, and they find one with her first in command, Uktar the Bursar. It seems obvious he has some disagreements with Nine Fingers. Karlach and Jaheira exploit this fact to get him to give a little bit of information. He happily offers a deal. Trade keys to vaults in the counting house to him, and maybe they might see something interesting in the counting house in the process, maybe? So the destination is set. The next place to search for Minsc is the counting house, a massive, high-security bank for the elite of Baldur's Gate. Outside the guild is the anti-hag support group base, according to the flyer. But the place is locked up and empty. Karlach investigates and finds evidence that they relocated after being evicted. They note the next location and move on. Slightly down the road is a fireworks shop, the one that Arthur mentioned being his supplier for the exploding teddy bears. Karlach goes in to investigate and see what's up, only to find the proprietor is tadpoled and immediately invokes the name of Gortash. Well, Karlach is all too happy to disrupt some plot of her old buddy Gortash, so after a little snooping, she finds the top floor is where the action is. But getting there seems difficult from here, so they take a more vertical approach. Using the roof opposite the shop, Karlach and friends fly across to the roof, and from here they can see the top floor is loaded with explosives. A good place to unleash a nasty flame-based attack to deal maximum damage. To start combat, Jaheira sends in her pet fire myrmidon to blow the place sky high. It goes hilariously well, as several Bay Knight guards are wiped out and a few others badly injured, while most of the explosives on the floor are destroyed. Taking advantage of the confusion, the rest of the team fly down and start fighting in earnest. This is a larger scale battle than most, with lots of combatants across different floors. Unfortunately for them, the team is more than prepared. lae'zel stuns dangerous foes, while Karlach and Shadowheart just kill weaker ones. Pets act as a distraction, and Jaheira gives some buffs. One unfortunate soul gets launched out of the third-story window by a force tunnel from Karlach. After a few turns, all the guys in the shop are dead, and all their explosives turn to ash. Another job well done. The team sneaks away to avoid attracting attention of the local guards. The road loops around to the central square of the lower city, with several vendors and shops. One such vendor is actually an old pal of Karlach's, Fitz the Firecracker. They catch up a little bit. Nice to see an old friend amongst all this chaos. Outside Sorcerer's Sundries, a massive magic shop that occupies most of the square, is a familiar face from Act 1, Eridan. This guy always had a nasty attitude. Now he is causing a commotion because he wants to go in and extort the wizard owner of the shop for money. See, this shop is run by a guy who put out a bounty to retrieve a treasure known as the Night Song. If that sounds familiar, it's because that is the same Night Song that turned out to be Dame Aelin the Aasimar, resting peacefully in camp. Karlach is straight up with this guy. Yes, I know the Night Song, and she is not a relic, but an Aasimar. He threatens Karlach that he will come looking for her to get his reward. Yeah, good luck with that, bro. I'm not exactly afraid of a level 3 fighter wielding a big stick for a weapon. Inside the shop is another familiar face, Roland, the magician's apprentice. He is planning a new illusion called Freebird or something, but can't get the rights. His boss is Loroakan, the owner of this shop and the same wizard looking for the Night Song. Karlach goes to meet this guy and size him up, and it turns out he is the most pompous, self-serving asshole in all of Faerun. Well, I guess no regrets in grabbing Aelin and putting this guy in his place. Karlach tells him she will be back with Aelin and it won't be pretty, but he doesn't seem very intimidated. Though, he seems all too happy to let the party ransack the place in the meantime. This is where Karlach picks up a very nice piece of loot, Marco Heshkir, the strongest staff in the game. It gives so many bonuses it would take too long to list them all, so just be assured it is very, very good. Loroakan will be dealt with later. For now, there are more places to investigate in town. While working towards the next stop, Karlach sees a cobbler and recognizes it as belonging to the parents of one Archduke Enver Gortash. She stops in to see his parents, only to find that they are tadpoled and under mind control. She does a mercy by killing them both because their lives are now a living hell with no control over their bodies, but also because their selfish actions are pretty directly responsible for the current megalomaniac Gortash's behavior. They drop a few tadpoles to eat, and snooping around upstairs reveals a note where Gortash outlines his plan to get the crown of Karsus. Here, he mentions Helsik the Diabolist by name. This must be the same one Yurgir mentioned the night before. Karlach finally reaches the new base of operations of the anti-hag support group. She busts her way inside to talk to them. They are very defensive at first, but Karlach assures them that she is an expert at killing hags, and things simmer down a bit. It turns out Mayrina, the very same pregnant lady from the incident with Auntie Ethel, is also here and leading this group of hag survivors. She has been doing research on how to permanently defeat a hag, but now she is hexed. Upstairs, Karlach finds Mayrina in the form of a sheep. Mayrina barely manages to spit out the word doll, which was enough of a clue. A creepy giggling doll is clearly the source of this hex, so Karlach starts smacking it with a stick. After a few smacks, the doll is destroyed and Mayrina cured of her hex. Then, the Dragonborn, who is hanging around with the survivors downstairs, shows up and reveals he is the source of the hex. It turns out he is a redcap and an agent of Anti. Wait, Anti? Nah, couldn't be. So this fight is just against one redcap, so not exactly a threat, but I do make a pretty sizable mistake in this fight. Did you catch it? Maybe you can see where this is going? Well, after a few characters take their turns, the redcap is pretty soundly defeated. As Mayrina walks downstairs... Mayrina? You okay? Wake up, girl. Well, isn't that a shame? None of the people downstairs seem to blame us for the accident with Mayrina. I guess they assumed the redcap got her. I mean, this is a good lesson to everybody. Keep a lid on your concentration spells after combat ends. Innocent pregnant women might get hurt. Karlach learns that all of her research is kept in a safe in the house. She opens the safe and finds a recipe for something called Hag's Bane, and the ingredients needed to make it. So she creates one and decides it's time to go after Anti one more time and put an end to this. Well, it would be, but the counting house is like right there, so they go there first. Jaheira talks her way inside, and they go downstairs to the vaults. Karlach opens the door with a bottle of water and a lightning arrow, which is an easy trick to get around this puzzle. In the vault room, the guards are celebrating victory while standing around a treasure chest. They seem very confident that they solved their little problem. Until they didn't, because Minsc bursts his way out of the chest, actually a mimic, with ease. Jaheira wants to confront him, but Karlach senses something is a little off here and holds her back. That's when another Jaheira appears out of nowhere and starts giving orders to Minsc, which Minsc happily obeys. After they escape the vault, they leave behind a bunch of ballist assassins, so time to clean these guys up. This is usually an extremely annoying battle, because these assassins continually use an attack and then go invisible. And worse, they start battle with Sanctuary, which makes it hard to take them down before they get a chance to do that. But there are a few ways to deal with this issue. One, Volo's Ersatz Eye, which Karlach currently has. Doesn't always work, but it helps a lot. Next, Black Hole, which again, Karlach has, and can use as a bonus action. Black Hole applies the effect slow, which makes it so they can only take one action per turn. That prevents attack plus invisible shenanigans. Finally, if you need to drag someone out of invisible, an AoE or area control spell will do the trick. Even something like Spike Growth will pull them out of invisible, and since it has a pretty big area, it makes it easy. Using these tricks, the assassins were kept under control and taken out pretty quickly, preventing any casualties. After the battle, Jaheira is pissed. Now she knows the reason Minsc is pulling all this crap. He's being manipulated by a doppelganger wearing her face. Investigating the area reveals they clearly escaped to somewhere in the sewers, which Jaheira has an idea of where. The end of this quest is fast approaching. The next stop is the Blushing Mermaid, where the lady claimed her daughter went missing. Karlach starts to investigate and talks to the captain. Captain Grizzly starts out normal enough, saying that Laura, the mother, is crazy and threatened her men with a knife. She claims there is no daughter, and this is all just the ravings of a madwoman. But then things escalate when Captain Grizzly asks Karlach to murder Laura. Isn't that taking things a little bit far? When Karlach refuses, the good captain reveals her true nature. It is actually Auntie Ethel in disguise. Karlach asks how she can possibly be back when they made sure to kill her in her lair, and Auntie Ethel just laughs it off. Not so strange for a hag to come back from the dead. Auntie reveals she really did kidnap Laura's daughter, Vanra, and is currently incubating her inside her belly to turn her into a new hag. She leaves the party to deal with some redcap minions and retreats somewhere. Well, redcaps aren't much of a threat, so the party quickly dispatches them and starts looking around. In the cellar, there is a hidden door. On the other side is a locked door, and the key was being held by one of the redcaps upstairs. This area is a very obvious hag lair, much like the one they found before, and once again, complete with mask-wearing thralls. Karlach sneaks past these guys so she can avoid hurting them and opens the next room. Here, Auntie Ethel comes out of hiding and attacks. Now it's a real battle. Early on, Jaheira goes straight for the jugular with the Hag's Bane. She tosses it at Auntie, and it causes her to vomit up Vanra. With the child safe, now they can bash down Auntie with no holding back. But there is another thing protecting the hag here. some mushrooms scattered about the area, which will automatically revive Auntie from the dead if they are left to their devices. The girls split up the work here. Karlach focuses on mushrooms, especially since she has haste, which means she gets 6 attacks per turn. lae'zel helps kill a mushroom as well, though she fails to take it down in 1 turn. Pretty much everyone else is focused on Auntie, with the clones and the minions being ignored. Jaheira takes quite the beating from the clones using Ray of Sickness, but she never goes down, though the blast radius from 1 explosive mushroom nearly takes her out. After all the mushrooms were handled, everybody gangs up on Auntie to try and finish her off. Before the end, in order to assure at least 1 party member is capable of speech, lae'zel drops Wild Shape. None of the minions die in the battle, and Captain Grizzly is particularly grateful that she survived this nightmare. With Auntie Ethel taken down, this time for good, Karlach heads back to Laura's house and finds Vanra there safe and sound, finally putting an end to the story of the hag. Also, rest in peace, Mayrina. Karlach starts heading towards the Diabolist shop, but makes a quick stop when she notices an old friend. Damon has opened a shop here in the city as well, in his own forge. Things are going well for him. He drops another hint that he might have feelings for Karlach, but I guess he doesn't want to waste time on someone who's going to die soon. Oh well, at least Shadowheart doesn't have that kind of hang-up. When Karlach finds Helsik the Diabolist, she haggles to make a deal on getting everybody into the Hells. It costs her some money just to get to the point where the offer is made, but with the price that high, Karlach suggests something else. Retrieve a relic from the House of Hope and deliver it to Helsik in exchange for free passage. Helsik is convinced and requests some gauntlets. So they open up the portal upstairs using the package Helsik provides, and with that out of the way, decide to leave it for a little bit later, maybe level 12. That would probably be a good time to deal with this. That night, Karlach approaches Dame Aelin about the situation with Lorroakan the Wizard. Aelin is all too eager to go and smash his ugly smug face. Isabella's concerned, but Karlach assures her she will be fine. The party rests up to prepare for the battle, and in the morning head straight for the tower. Lorroakan is excited to see his prize fly in of her own accord, and attempts to get her to come along peacefully. Roland sees Aelin, and at that moment realizes what kind of guy he's working for. But Aelin knows this guy's type and has no patience for those who lust for power. Karlach pledges to support Aelin in this battle, so Lorroakan decides it's time to take a more forceful approach. Roland chooses wisely and decides to join Karlach's side, and so the battle begins. Lorroakan is flanked by Myrmidons of every flavor, a perfect match for my party. Karlach opens up with a black hole to get everybody brought together and debuffed, but Lorroakan has a very nasty counterattack, one that he can use multiple times per turn even. So when Karlach uses black hole, he counters, but then the cast of that triggers reactions from everybody to use psionic backlash, and he counters that too. The result, Karlach is at death's door right off the bat, but she takes the risk and drops an ice storm on his head. Fortunately, this knocks him prone, and prone targets can't use reactions anymore, so the danger is past. Now, the rest of the party are free to use their full power. Jaheira uses Moonmote as a powerful party-wide buff. Meanwhile, lae'zel and Shadowheart do Myrmidon things to defeat Lorroakan's minions. The first to die is the Water Myrmidon, weakened by Shadowheart and finished off by lae'zel. The Fire Myrmidon loses its turn to stun, and the Air Myrmidon loses its turn to an attack of opportunity, ensnaring it. Lorroakan gets a chance to act next, and he decides to drop a fireball right in the middle of the team, but it actually doesn't do that much. Even pitiful Roland survives it with little issue. Aelin uses her turn to wipe out Crank the Construct. Then finally, the Earth Myrmidon blows up an ice mephit, which just hurts itself. And now the turn order starts again. Karlach finally wild shapes, uses haste, and flies down into the battle proper. She starts going ham on the Earth Myrmidon, finishing it off. With one attack left, she does a little damage to the Air Myrmidon and ends turn. Jaheira goes into wild shape now, which means the full team is finally transformed, and she just wipes Lorroakan out with her powerful Tavern Brawler and powered punches. All that is left is the Air Myrmidon, and he is facing down about 10 enemies alone. The battle is over, and Dame Aelin shows no mercy to her would-be captor. After the battle, Aelin seems uncharacteristically sullen, but I honestly don't really get why. This is not even close to the first villain she's killed. She showed just as much brutality in finishing off Ketheric, more even. So why does she feel any amount of sorrow for this prick? Roland, on the other hand, is kind of ecstatic. He decides to take control of Ramesses Tower, which will finally let him do the Aztec tomb illusion anytime he wants. With the sound of the final countdown playing in the background, Karlach leaves Roland to his devices and departs the tower, once again victorious. Now it is finally time to figure out what is going on with Minsk. Karlach uses an entrance to the sewers near the Blushing Mermaid. When she goes down, she sees a bunch of greasy mephits and elementals, and a crazy wizard approaches her. Karlach talks him down without a fight, which is probably good because she could light the whole city on fire by fighting these greasy dudes. A little further in the sewers, there are some ballast assassins waiting. After taking them out and solving an extremely easy puzzle, the team enter a sewer pipe and see Minsk in conversation with Roa from the Zents. She's being paid off for something. We don't know the deal with her yet, but it's clear she's on the side of the Absolute, and this time she won't get away. When the conversation is over, battle begins against Minsk, Roa, and a bunch of ballasts and doppelgangers. Roa immediately tries to flee. Using a combination of oppressive magic might and Myrmidon strikes, both Roa and the fake Jaheira are taken out in one turn. Some of the assassins survive and start targeting the team, but they don't manage to do any real damage. For the moment, Minsk is mostly ignored. There needs to be some care taken in how he is handled. The remaining assassins are taken out one by one, and both Karlach and Jaheira switch to non-lethal damage and start smacking Minsk with sticks. In the end, Jaheira lands the final blow with her spear, which brings Minsk down, but not dead. Karlach senses his rage and implores the Emperor to bring him under their protection. The Emperor is being weirdly stubborn about this one. Not sure what he has against Minsk, but he really doesn't want him in the party. But Jaheira makes some very painful-sounding threats of bodily harm to the Emperor, and Karlach implies they might be serious. In the end, the Emperor relents, and the sound of Jaheira's voice gives just enough of a window for Minsk to be brought under control. He immediately changes to his typical cheerful self and goes out in search of his missing companion. Karlach and Jaheira follow behind while Minsk destroys walls and then shows us what he was looking for, Boo, the miniature giant space hamster. Minsk pledges to join Karlach's team, along with Boo, and fight the Absolute that has caused such havoc in his simple brain. Back at camp, after a lengthy getting-to-know-you conversation with Minsk, Karlach uses her tadpole to figure out what the plot was with Roa and the doppelgangers. It turns out they were planning to attack the guild and kill Nine Fingers. Well, I guess there is one last step in the story for Jaheira, the guild. During the last battle, everybody hit level 12, so they all grab their last feat. It brings everybody in line with having Alert, a +2 to Wisdom, and either Savage Attacker or Tavern Brawler. They also grab a new spell, but nothing really important. After leveling up, they all set out to do one last task, defend the guild from the Zentaran assault. They arrive just in time. The Zents begin battle as soon as Karlach shows up, and with everybody having Alert now, it lets the whole party go first. This lets them do tons of damage right off the bat, killing a few and weakening several more. Nine Fingers also has a ridiculously high initiative, so she goes pretty early as well, and she does a ton of damage with her throwing daggers. Honestly, I have a theory that Nine Fingers could win this battle solo if she had to, but might as well get in her good graces by helping out. The Zents go down pretty easily, and afterwards, Karlach goes to Nine Fingers. She's grateful and pledges her support in the coming battle. While I have no intention of having Minsk actually in the party at any point, his recruitment is the last major task to do for Jaheira's story. We left off in front of Figaro the Facemaker's shop. He's next on the list for murder targets by the ballast aspirant Dolor. Fortunately, Karlach walks into Figaro's shop at literally the exact right moment to stop the murder in the nick of time. Karlach yells out to stop the assassin before he can deal the final blow, and he takes that as a challenge he must overcome for his Lord Ball. This fight sort of establishes a pattern that I will be using many times in this part, which is copious use of the Illithid power Black Hole. Black Hole is a fantastic debuff that affects a huge number of targets, and thanks to the Awakened buff from the Githyanki Kresh, is a bonus action. So, Karlach can open up a tough fight with that and still have her action to cast powerful magic, enhanced by her legendary staff, Marco Heshkir. After her little opening, Dolor attempts to put some things to sleep. Fortunately, it doesn't stick. After that, my whole team gets a chance to deal some damage to the many doppelganger targets in this battle. Shadowheart prioritizes taking Dolor out of commission since he loves to use nasty status effects like Paralyze. Once Dolor is out, it isn't much of a problem wiping out the remaining targets with Myrmidon action. This is probably where I first understand just how strong Jaheira's punches are. She wipes out multiple targets and knocks another prone. Once the last of the enemies is mopped up, Karlach talks to the people she just rescued. Figaro, the owner of the shop, and... who's this? Oh, Devella the Investigator, right. Well, why is she here again? It turns out she was on her way to the upper city to protect the elite billionaire class, since cops have a duty to make sure people with money are safe. And she stopped to visit this shop when she heard the commotion. She became a victim herself, but Karlach showed up and saved the day. With Dolor dead, Karlach gets several key pieces of information about how to track down Orin and the Temple of Bal. But that is a task for another day. Orin can wait. Karlach has a much more tantalizing target in mind. By the way, the crew got some new threads from Figaro. I didn't put much thought into it, but I figured they could use something new. Jaheira thought she could keep it from us, but she has a house right around the block from Figaro's shop. Inside are her children and grandchildren? They seem like a happy family.
I taught you better manners than that.
No, you didn't.
Visiting her home and her private sanctum is a nice diversion, but it's mostly just for fun. Not much to be gained here. Jaheira does have a unique necklace that prevents her from getting cursed and gives her a point of wisdom. Unfortunately, her build makes that an odd number, and I'm too lazy to respec her yet again. Karlach visits the Society of Brilliance next. The leader makes another attempt to get the Githyanki egg from the party, but at this point, lae'zel is dead set on taking care of this thing. No way Karlach would ever go through with it anyway. Upstairs is Blurg, a friendly face from way back in Act 1. Back in the Myconid colony, he was a pair with a friendly mind flayer named Omeluum. This time, Omeluum is missing. Blurg doesn't seem to know where he is either, so I guess we'll just have to keep our eyes open. Now, Karlach is getting close to the Steel Watch Foundry, intent on stopping Gortash's little army of toy soldiers. But out front is a peculiar sight. A group of protesters have set up a bunch of fire wine barrels and tied a poor man to them. It seems they're carrying out mob justice against some unfortunate Oh, it's Volo. Just when Karlach is considering what to do about all this, she notices that the leader of these belligerents has a tadpole. This is clearly some absolute plot to silence Volo. Not that I blame them. When Karlach accuses the man of being an absolute cultist, he turns the crowd on her, and a fight begins. Focusing down the enemies here is all well and good. They aren't exactly threatening, just some level 8 humans or whatever. The issue is that they have already started a fire leading right to Volo, and it doesn't take long for that pile of barrels to explode. So, getting Volo to safety is first priority. Karlach spends her turn flying closer and using Create Water to douse the fire. Meanwhile, the others are dropping ice like it's hot on these cultist fools. At this point, there is very little a ragtag group like these guys can do to harm my level 12 druid party. They fall like dominoes. Volo is grateful he isn't a piece of barbecue and heads to the camp to thank us properly later. There is a strange sound coming from the temple next to the foundry, so Karlach investigates. This is a funeral held by worshippers of the bitch queen Umberly, a goddess of the sea. These wave servants are furious that their adherent was killed in the bay due to some mysterious beast that is tainting the waters. Since these guys don't really understand what they're dealing with, all we can glean is that there is something dangerous in the water that needs taking out. So Karlach agrees. The fishermen on the dock give a little more information. The water has been polluted by an awful lot of oil lately, and whatever big thing was in the water seems to have headed across the bay to a warehouse. Well, this isn't a huge priority at the moment, but it might become more important later. The real goal for coming to this part of town is the foundry, where Gortash is assembling his Steel Watch army. The team sneaks into the compound around the side, entering from the Wave Servant Temple, but they get caught by a Steel Watch patrol on the other side. The Steel Watchers are very resistant to physical damage, so magic is the way to go here. After taking it out, they sneak inside the foundry to see what is going on. From the shadows, Karlach overhears a conversation between a Bay Knight guard and her captive, a Gondian slave. These are the faction of gnomes that Walbrin keeps making a fuss over. They sure don't look dangerous, they look abused. Karlach hears that these guys have their families kept prisoner somewhere, and that some glowy purple device they have can kill them at any moment. This is enough for her to intervene. Karlach approaches and confronts the Bay Knight. She convinces the surrounding Gondians to rebel as well and overthrow their captors. Just as well, if she failed to persuade them, she would have to fight them too. During this fight, the Bay Knight guard drops a motivator, which gives a time limit before it automatically goes off, killing all the Gondians. Not just the ones in this room, literally all of them everywhere. Jaheira stays out of wild shape and keeps a turn ready just for this purpose. The first time you interact with it, you need to pass a DC 5 intelligence check, but thankfully that is pretty easy. After that, it is automatic when you spend an action to stop the motivators. After the enemies are down, the Gondians are freaking the hell out, dude. They're concerned, justifiably, that this will result in retaliation from the Bay Knights and all of them and their families will be killed. Karlach investigates further and meets another Gondian in the back room by the name of Xander Tubin. This guy has been blinded by the Bay Knights. He speaks about how their families are in some prison somewhere, but doesn't give much info about where. He suggests investigating downstairs, though. lae'zel takes this opportunity to exploit her day-long invisibility and goes down alone. As she does some reconnaissance, she overhears some Bay Knight guards speaking about a recent incident. The prison transport crashed into someone and killed them, a wave serpent. Wait, this sounds familiar. Prison transport is some kind of sea vessel, and it is related to the quest for the wave serpents. With this information as enough story justification to go to the next location, the party sets out to investigate. The destination is Flim Cargo, a warehouse across the water from the foundry. While overhearing a conversation indicating that the Wave Servant quest is directly related to the Gondian prisoners is a decent story justification, I decided to just meta-knowledge my way over there in the sewers. The sewer path is easier as long as you know where to go, and the grease mage is handled, which thankfully he was dealt with in the last video. In Flim Cargo, Karlach finds a dwarf tending to a strange machine. After talking to him about the wave servants and such, he admits what it is he does. He uses this underwater vehicle to transport prisoners on the orders of Gortash. The prison is the most secure in all the realms, called the Iron Throne. This is a reference to BG1, by the way, but it is a pretty passive reference. Not much relevant to that game actually happens there. Karlach convinces the captain to take the party down to the prison, and so they rest up to prepare. At camp, Volo provides his reward for rescuing him, a book he is carrying that explains about the ballast monstrosity, the Slayer. Orin can transform into the Slayer during her battle, and this book allows the character who reads it to resist frightened effects from her. That night, Shadowheart approaches Karlach and gives a final big scene in her romance path, and unfortunately, I can't show any of it. Too bad. Bright and early the next day, Karlach and friends take the submersible down to investigate Gortash's secluded prison, the Iron Throne. I'm gonna be real about this part, my game froze during this session a total of 4 times, making me spend over an hour repeating gameplay. However, I actually did discover the reason after the fact. This gameplay session was immediately after a hotfix, which sort of broke the PS5 version. The game had an insidious bug that made it suddenly freeze when switching characters during combat, made more likely with summons. There was a temporary measure to fix it that I found on Reddit and implemented for the next session, and it was hotfixed within a few days. So yeah, while this particular section was a mess, it all turned out fine in the end. Thanks for the fast response, Larian. So, setting that unfortunate business aside, let's get into the meat of this situation. On the way down to the Iron Throne, Gortash makes a video call on the submersible and threatens Karlach. If she goes through with docking here, he will have no choice but to sink the place to send a message. Karlach is beyond negotiations with this prick, so she blows his tactics aside and immediately docks, and the rescue mission begins. Shortly after descending from the submersible, she receives a mental message from somewhere. It is Omeluum, the missing friend Illithid, and somehow he ended up down here with the gnomes. And he drops another bombshell. Duke Ravengard is here as well. Gortash really has been busy with his kidnapping. Omeluum suggests that Karlach should prioritize freeing Ravengard, but the goal here is to save everyone, so the team splits up. I had 3 whole failed runs of practice thanks to bugs, so by the time the successful run came about, I was a master. Here's the strat. Karlach heads down the right tunnel, where there are 2 locked cells and 2 Sahuagins. lae'zel heads down the left tunnel, where there are 2 other locked cells and 2 Sahuagins, though one of those cells contains the Duke. Shadowheart heads straight ahead, where there is a room with a big pool of water, a locked cell, and a person stuck in a medical chair. The path straight ahead also leads to a corridor containing the room where Omeluum is being held, and connects to Karlach's room via a locked door. Jaheira, who can't fly, is more limited in her value in this battle, so she stays in caster form and zaps Sahuagins with magic. Then there is a whole pile of summons. The single most important summon in this is Scratch. I mentioned this in the Act 2 video, but Scratch is the only summon in the game with access to the Help command. At the time, he ended up failing in his duty because a Mind Flayer blasted him to death. This time, though, he will be redeemed and finally get to help some people. My good boy, the hero. The other summons are divvied up amongst the various tunnels supporting whoever is there. The most notable is that the ice methods are sent with Shadowheart, specifically because the Sahuagins in that tunnel are always wet, so they're weak to cold damage. Same reason I sent Shadowheart herself that way, to be honest. Like I said, I had a lot of practice to get this right by no fault of my own, so by the successful run, I had a good plan. By the end of the second turn, every cell was opened and everybody was at least headed towards the exit, except for Omeluum. Scratch managed to help one person out of a chair as well. Some of the less useful characters like Jaheira and us were sent back to the submersible early. I took extra care with Duke Ravengard because he starts with low HP. Karlach had haste, which means she not only did the most potential damage with 6 attacks a turn, but could also dash and cover the most ground. So when she finished in her room, she flew around to Shadowheart's room to help out there as well. On turn 3, Scratch got close to Amelloum's position. With Karlach fighting the spawning Sahuagins, Scratch rescued Amelloum, and everybody else got on board the submersible. By the end of turn 4, only Karlach was left fighting. Whenever one main playable character gets back to the submersible, all their summons teleport there as well. I had Amelloum make a beeline for Karlach's position once I gained control of him, for the simple reason that he has a special ability called Teleport to Submersible, which can target another person. Karlach actually missed her last turn because of haste lethargy, but thanks to Amelloum it was no big deal. He teleported the two of them back to safety on his turn. One strange thing that happened though was 4 of the green NPCs chose to just not board the submersible at all. They were very much within range, they just chose not to climb the ladder. My best guess is it was reading all the summons in there as taking up spots and they weren't able to enter. Oh well. The Duke, Amelloum, and most of the gnomes were saved, so mission success as far as I'm concerned. As with most cutscenes in this game, it has some weirdness whenever characters are in wild shape. So the escape sequence shows Jaheira since she was the only human character available to show. But the weirder thing is that the conversation with Duke Ravengard after this has Karlach speaking, but as a fire Myrmidon. I think this is the only time a Myrmidon is shown as the main character in a cutscene in this run. There may have been a similar occurrence with a bear earlier in the run. So, the gnomes and Ravengard and Amelloum all give their thanks for rescuing them. Then the party climbs the ladder to exit the submersible. This is when, suddenly, all the wave servants show up and start making threats. Jaheira is in control again in this cutscene, and I guess she thought it was a good idea to protect the dwarf or whatever. Anyway, time to fight. These guys are pretty pathetic, though they do summon some water elementals into the battle if given the chance. They were no match for Myrmidons. The leader died in a single turn from Karlach and a fire Myrmidon pet. Now that this whole business is handled, it's time to get back to the Foundry and finish off these Steel Watchers once and for all. They head straight there, and once again, Jaheira stays in caster form to handle motivators. The others do their Myrmidon thing and wipe out the Bay Knights lickety-split. After this battle, Xander Tubin is told about the Iron Throne, and he pledges to help in destroying the Foundry and joins the party. On the lower floor, the scene is chaos. 2 pumped-up Steel Watchers, called Hellfire Watchers, and a whole slew of Bay Knights against a ton of Gondians. And now, with Karlach and her army of Druids and their pets, it becomes a true mess of combatants. During this particular battle, some priority is given to eliminating the Steel Watchers first, so Shadowheart and lae'zel are sent that way. lae'zel manages to stun them several times to make it easier. Jaheira wild shapes as well here, and honestly, she wrecks shop. Earth Myrmidon punches are truly impressive with Tavern Brawler. The Bay Knights use Dominate a few times, but it never lasts long enough to make a difference. None of the Gondians fall in this battle, which is kind of impressive if you ask me, since there are so many things that can go wrong. I also realized during this fight that you don't need to be out of wild shape to disable the motivators. There is one more chamber in the Foundry where the control center is located. Xander Tubin leaves the party here. He usually says something to the party leader at this time, but since everybody is in wild shape... Anyway, this is a big boss battle. The Hellfire Steel Watcher Titan and 3 ranged Hellfire Watchers. Hellfire Watchers are very good at dealing AoE damage, as can be seen by this nasty use of Hellfire Exhaust right on the first turn. A lot of the summons are taken out or heavily damaged here. Look at this poor Ice Mephit. The big MVPs of this battle are lae'zel, for keeping the boss and some of the Hellfire Watchers stunned, and Jaheira for her ridiculous damage output. The boss likes to go into defensive mode every other turn or so, which makes it near impossible to damage. You need to deal at least 40 damage in a single damage instance to go through, and it gains resistance to a lot of damage types. So the battle is ultimately quite slow, thanks to having to take multiple turns off to wait this ability out. Shadowheart gets to use her Healing Vapors effect a few times here, which is cool I guess. Jaheira actually does get the occasional hit that penetrates defensive mode damage resistance. That was quite impressive. Once the Titan finally goes down, Jaheira picks up the excellent bow he drops, and then Xander Tubin goes to work sabotaging the place. In an epic action movie escape sequence, everybody bolts out of there before the place is completely destroyed. And in the aftermath, Wulbren shows up, clapping his hands like a comic book villain. He takes no time at all to switch his focus from the Steel Watchers that were just destroyed to the Gondians, who he has a burning hatred for. At this point, Karlach has seen enough to realize that Gondians were not at fault here. Gortash was using them and exploiting their genius on threat of violence. Barkis comes up and finally speaks his mind, calling out the completely unreasonable level of anger and hate Wulbren has been showing, and Karlach makes the key persuasion check to convince Barkis to step up and lead the Iron Hands in place of Wulbren. This is the good end here. Wulbren is an asshole who really doesn't need to have an army of genius inventors under his direct control. Thankfully, Barkis is charismatic enough to convince all his supporters to turn against him, and the Iron Hands and Gondians finally come to peace. Well, with the Steelwatch Foundry destroyed, that removes the last major obstacle to taking down Gortash and getting the long-awaited revenge for Karlach. But first, her allies have some unresolved issues to attend to. So, next up on the list is ending things for Shadowheart and the Sharans. Thanks to the cult that prides itself on secrecy and hiding in plain sight, straight up giving away their location back in the last video, they know exactly where to go next, the House of Grief in the lower city. Shadowheart gets a cold reception from the people there, as usual, and they don't even try to keep their identities a secret from her. Something about Sharans being spiteful against traitors overpowers their sense of reason and self-preservation. They let the party walk in unhindered and take part in the mapping of the heart. Karlach initially plans to do this, but Shadowheart insists on dealing with it herself. Shadowheart quickly figures out who is giving the mapping, the Mother Superior, whose true identity is Viconia Devere, another BG-1 returnee. Stupidly, I forgot to drop Jaheira out of wild shape so she could participate in this cutscene. I imagine she has something to say to Viconia, her former traveling companion. I did realize my mistake immediately after the cutscene though, and dropped wild shape in preparation for the next one. Everybody goes inside to confront the Sharans on their home turf. This battle is a doozy, well known for having a truly overwhelming number of enemy combatants. As expected, Jaheira has a line for Viconia, and Viconia responds in kind. But this happens exactly once during this dialogue. Shadowheart is defiant, ready for battle. Karlach supports her entirely. There is no peace to be had here. Let the battles begin. Viconia starts the battle with Sanctuary, which is incredibly annoying. It means she cannot be targeted with direct target attacks, but it does not make her immune to damage, it just needs to be an area attack around her. Thankfully, Druids are laden with AoE spells, and Karlach especially has quite the affinity for big ice blasts thanks to her staff. She also has Black Hole to drag as many targets together as possible. A little bit of water from Shadowheart makes them take double damage too, a truly nasty combo to drop on turn 1. Cone of Cold drops 2 targets and does more than half of Viconia's HP. Jaheira tosses a Call Lightning into the mix, dropping her to near death. On Viconia's turn, she debuffs Shadowheart, then starts walking, only to slip on the ice and lose the rest of her turn. When Karlach gets another turn, she uses Black Hole and drops an Ice Storm that takes out Viconia and a ton more of her followers. And that is basically it. There are a lot of targets in this battle, but most are weaklings who die to 1 AoE spell, so Druids clean house here. Viconia has some decent loot. Her club is a good strength stick replacement for the club of Hill Giant strength, though the party runs elixirs at all times, so not really necessary. But her shield is definitely a very good upgrade for Jaheira. Shadowheart meets her old friend Nocturne in Viconia's private room and learns a lot about herself. Then she locates her parents in the deepest chamber of the cloister. Shar herself appears here to taunt Shadowheart and force her into a tragic choice: kill her own parents to spare her the curse of Shar, or let them live and remain cursed the rest of her life. Karlach allows Shadowheart to make the choice herself, and she chooses to let her parents go. They die, but they become moon motes, magic orbs containing the holy power of Selûne, and this puts a period on the story of Shadowheart and Shar. The Mirror of Loss is located here, which gives every member of your party a shot at getting a permanent +2 bonus to any one ability score. This is dependent on succeeding a pretty difficult DC 25 religion check. There are a lot of ways to increase your likelihood of getting this, but I'll outline what I used. There are 3 primary pieces of gear I used. The Warped Headband of Intellect, obtained from killing Lump the Ogre back in Act 1, which sets intelligence to 17. The Mark of the Shifter, a ring obtained from either killing the Strange Ox or helping it reach Baldur's Gate safely in Act 3, and the Mage's Friend, a ring obtained in the Arcane Tower in Act 1. On top of these pieces of gear, I also had Guidance from basically my entire party, but it only stacks once. And Enhance Ability on Intelligence, or Fox's Cunning, as it's called in-game. The sum of all these buffs is a bonus of 6 to 12 with advantage. Not a guaranteed success by any means, but it allowed Karlach to succeed on a roll of 15. If you're wondering why Karlach looks like a generic tiefling man, it's because the Mark of the Shifter requires shapeshifting to activate, but Disguise Self works wonders here. I just used the mask of the shapeshifter from the Digital Deluxe Edition. Face paint obtained at the circus in Rivington also works. With the same setup, I did Jaheira next. She has proficiency with religion, which means her base bonus is 4 higher than Karlak's, so she succeeds easily. Finally, we have lae'zel, and this was a very weird case. lae'zel would presumably have the same bonuses as Karlak, but she has a very strange bonus for being a Dark Justiciar. Since when? How? lae'zel, did you murder Aelin without telling me or something? So that gives advantage, meaning nobody needs to use Enhance ability, and Githyanki get their Astral Knowledge that gives another +4 bonus. So her bonuses were actually the same as Jaheira's, with a weird advantage from what is clearly a bug. I checked her character sheet later and yup, she is most definitely tagged as Dark Justiciar. Anyway, each of the 3 characters takes a +2 to Wisdom. Unfortunately, Shadowheart is actually forbidden from getting this buff. She can only ever access the Mirror of Loss if she is a Dark Justiciar, and if she chooses to forsake Shar at any point, she loses the ability to get it. With Shadowheart's story out of the way, I spend a little time getting my party in order, buying elixirs, selling junk, getting propositioned by Halsin. I also speak to Duke Ravengard, who joined the camp after saving him from the Iron Throne. He requests that we rescue his buddy, Counselor Floric. Maybe we can pop into the prison later, we'll have to wait and see. But after getting everything in order, I set out for the next big task on the list, stealing the Orphic Hammer for lae'zel. This one is going to be quite the task, as the House of Hope is probably the longest and most grueling single side quest in Act 3, if not the whole game. When everybody arrives at the House of Hope, they are approached by someone by the name of a Hope. This is a crazy woman, but I guess she is the only friendly face around here, so might as well hear her out. While maneuvering through Hope's dialogue is a bit of a puzzle unto itself, she does reveal where the Orphic Hammer is located, the Archives, and she also drops some disguises on the party so they aren't quite so conspicuous. The House of Hope is truly loaded with excellent loot. Some examples include a staff with a free use spell slot once per day, any spell level, a pretty good helmet that prevents critical hits and gives +2 to saving throws against spells, and of course, the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength and Amulet of Greater Health. For this particular run, the staff isn't super necessary, but I'll hold on to it. The helmet went to Jaheira, and the amulet to Karlak. The gauntlets are cool and all, but everybody's already running permanent Cloud Giant Elixir, so really redundant. I just gave them to Helsig. First, Karlak and pals visit the archives to see the hammer. Usually, you can fool the archivist into thinking you're some top-level devil in disguise. Karlak had a freebie option with no check that gave the exact same outcome as that option, so that's kind of neat. He offers a pass to enter the boudoir to pass the time until Raphael returns. In reality, the boudoir is where the key to getting the hammer is hidden. In there is a carbon copy of Raphael, but in way skimpier clothes. This guy is Harlep, and Karlak is not down to play his sexy games, so it turns into a battle right away. This is possibly the most annoying battle in the whole game thanks to Harlep's gimmick. He phases out after taking damage every turn, only to come back once his own turn starts. So you can only damage him a max of once per turn with only one character. He also comes prepared with a bunch of imps as backup, and these imps are much more threatening than they look. They each have access to Eldritch Blast with the Repelling Blast invocation. Basically, don't stand near open windows unless you want to trip down the mountain. After a very, very long battle dealing 1 damage instance per turn against this guy, he goes down and drops the key to the safe. The safe itself is located behind a portrait of Raphael, which explodes on contact. And the password to pick up the hammer is here, giving the last key to finishing this quest. This room also contains the most magical thing in the whole game, a spa that gives you an on-demand free long rest. Thanks to this thing, you can spend however much time and spell slots you want making your party as broken overpowered as possible. And then still be fully rested on top of that. I made a whole party of Air Myrmidon summons at this point because that stun is just too useful. Then, it's time to go get that hammer. Once the hammer is in hand, all hell breaks loose. The halls are filled with fiery spheres and exploding lost souls. This part of the quest actually takes quite some time since there are so many battles in the way. Each one puts quite a bit of pressure on the party too because all of the damage over time from the fire effects. But thankfully, if you can reach the boudoir again, you can always use that to restore between fights. At the end of the corridor is a latch leading down to the dungeon where Hope is being held and awaiting the hammer. This battle has a couple of spectators and some imps. Once again, don't be fooled. The spectators may look scary, but the bigger threats are by far the imps. And my dumbass didn't get the memo and let 2 of my party members get one-shot killed. Back to back, too. Shadowheart is blasted off, and immediately the very next imp does the same to lae'zel. Fortunately, Karlak and Jaheira don't get got, so I had a chance to finish these guys off and recover. The spectators also like to use counterattacks every time someone comes within a certain range of them, and sometimes that sticks status effects. Some of the more painful ones are Paralyze and Befuddled. But after taking out the imps and playing around them, the battle went reasonably smoothly. Jaheira once again pops bad guys like balloons with her big hits. I used a couple Revivify scrolls to get the team back up, but I have so many of them it doesn't really hurt all that much. Also a millionaire by Faerun standards, so can always buy more. lae'zel puts the hammer in hand and smashes the chains holding Hope, and she joins the party for the final showdown with Raphael. A quick resummoning of the crew thanks to all the pets disappearing, and then a refreshing bath before heading to the battle. I was hoping for a little more unique Karlach jazz in this dialogue, but not this time. Raphael just has his usual lines. Yrgir immediately changes sides though, thanks to siding with him in Act 2. This is the main benefit of solving that part of the game that way. If you kill him in Act 2, you need a DC 30 persuasion check to get him to join you in this fight. As usual, Karlach is first and she opens with a black hole. Raphael does not resist the slow, which is fantastic, and he gets relocated to a better spot. A little water from lae'zel along with her shrieking sword to increase damage, and then Karlach blasts the whole group with ice. Raphael has a counterattack here that gives a bunch of people Beguile, which is essentially Charm. They just can't directly target him, but they can absolutely use AoEs near him. Yrgir comes in on his turn and uses a big concussive blast, which is very rude because it hurts my crew more than the enemy. Shadowheart is focusing on a pillar, but even with a haste pot, can't actually get it done in one turn. Close though. So a Myrmidon summon has to fly in and finish the job. This gives Raphael a bit of a debuff. The other Myrmidon pets also get their turns and start smacking Raphael in an attempt to stick an early stun. Surprisingly, one of them does land it. His save looks to only be about +7 though. With Raphael missing his turn, the Cambions all go off, but they just spam Ray of Fire for relatively minor damage. Most of them can't even hit more than one ray per round. One Cambion gets cheeky and gives Yrgir a poke though. That actually hurt a bit. Little known fact, the stun from air Myrmidons actually lasts 2 turns, which is hilarious because it's already stupidly strong that they can do that on command. Usually, on Hope's turn, she would remove Cambions from the battle with her Banish spell, but I figured she would be just as useful hurting Raphael. So I have her pop a Guiding Bolt, and it actually hits, and unlike his Cambion friends, he doesn't reflect radiant damage. While Karlach does some good damage to a pack of enemies with Ice Storm, her Mind Blast is sadly ineffective. lae'zel attempts to drop a level 6 Call Lightning right on Raphael's face, but he resists the damage, though he gets a debuff to saves thanks to her Ring. A second cast with haste does a bit more damage and stacks more of the debuff. Raffi here is still pretty healthy though. Most bosses would be meat by now. Now Shadowheart joins the fray and swings at him with her ice-laden trident. She does more damage with her attacks than even lae'zel did with 2 level 6 spells. Jaheira is still focusing on the adds and doing crazy good work at taking them out. I try to get another stun proc on Raphael with all the air Myrmidons because his 3rd turn is coming up and I would rather he not get an action. I use Hope to give Bless to basically everybody that matters, so at least she's contributing. Turn 3 rolls around, and Karlach uses Black Hole again to reposition Raphael and apply Slow. She also uses Call Lightning now since Raphael is still wet. Thanks to all those save debuffs, he finally takes full damage. lae'zel adds some damage of her own, and now he's sitting at about 1/3 of his life. Unfortunately, none of the air Myrmidons managed to stick stun. I should have probably attacked with Shadowheart here, but chose to heal instead. Even Jaheira can't deal 200 damage in one turn, so now the dreaded moment comes. Raphael takes an action. Or does he? What just happened? He had the opportunity and chose to do nothing at all? Well, the battle is all but won now. I have like 10 combatants on him and all his pets are dead. 100 damage is child's play at this point. When Jaheira comes up in the turn order, she gives him the pounding of a lifetime and the battle comes to an end. Honestly, despite coming out with very little in the way of damage or casualties, it was probably the most complex encounter thus far. Raphael's high stats and especially his HP pool really do a lot to prevent a fight from ending too quickly and smoothly. Hope is grateful to have survived this ordeal, though she is upset her sister died in the combat. She gives a reward, but otherwise stays behind in the House of Hope to rebuild it as a place of light in the darkness. Karlach loots Raphael's body and takes the best armor in the game. lae'zel will be equipping this, eventually, when I remember I have it, and Yrgir pledges to help in the final battle, while also having some fun unique lines for Karlach thanks to her history as a warrior in the Blood War. Stepping outside, the Emperor throws another fit about Karlach just completely ignoring his feelings, and Karlach tells him to take a chill pill. She's already committed to this whole Orpheus thing because she promised her bestie lae'zel. Better get used to it. As a last step in this quest, Karlach goes down into the sewers to rendezvous with Kithrak Voss. There, she reveals the hammer. Voss rewards lae'zel with a silver sword of the astral plane, a legendary weapon in the hands of Githyanki. Again, she will be using this later. Falara Luve and a shield are doing good work for now, but I won't forget about her ultimate weapon by the end. This wraps up all the side stories for Karlach's companions. Now it is finally time for Karlach herself to get what she wants, to dance on the bloodied corpse of Gortash. The party heads to the gate to Worm's Rock at Basilisk Gate, ready to storm the castle once and for all. The scene here is pretty similar to how they left it what seems like ages ago. Tons of hostile forces waiting to stop Karlach and her team, except this time, no Steel Watchers, which really shifts the balance. Everybody gets into Myrmidon form and a train of Flaming Fist destruction ensues. After clearing out the first floor of the stronghold, Karlach takes a quick detour downstairs to the dungeon. There are a few more guys to remove down there, then she takes the key from the guard and uses it to open the cell of Floric. At first, she is down in the dumps and has no intention of escaping, but once she learns Ravengard is both alive and safe, she changes her tune. No check necessary. It is a pretty simple thing to escort her outside with no guards in the way, so she is led to safety and the battle continues. The second floor is the throne room, where the inauguration ceremony took place. Much less scary this time, again thanks to no Steel Watchers. After bashing and smashing the Bay Knight guards on this floor, the assault continues up one more level to the top of the fortress and Gortash's office. I was hoping for a nice confrontation scene here between Karlach and Gortash, but alas, that ship sailed when I aggroed him 20 hours back. So the battle begins immediately when she enters the room with no pomp and circumstance. Gortash has some real tricks going for him to make this fight extra annoying. First and foremost, his damage resistance, and in some cases, immunities. Even when wet, he is only neutral on ice and lightning damage. Real bummer. And thunder damage does nothing at all, so Jaheira is heavily nerfed. He also has very high initiative and opens the fight with a nasty sunbeam which blinds about half the party. Black Hole repositions him, but he actually saves to not get slowed. All his friends in the room are small peanuts for my army of air myrmidons. They get effectively stun-locked out of the fight. Shadowheart also takes a dude out thanks to him being wet. I haven't mentioned this yet, but most bosses in Honor Mode have an effect called Legendary Resistance, which gives them a +10 to save things they would normally fail. But they can only use it a total of 3 times, and then that effect is gone forever. So one benefit of so much stun spam with pets is it gets rid of this very quickly and effectively. After the first turn is up, Gortash tries to blind a few more people, but it doesn't do much. With so few of his friends left, most everybody focuses on him. It is during this turn, especially when Shadowheart is bashing him, that he goes Super Saiyan. If you have never fought this dude in Honor Mode, let me tell you, this is the biggest glow up any boss sees in the whole game. I can't believe how much this fight changes thanks to this one new mechanic. His body grows like 3 times bigger, he summons a whole ton of adds that give him stat buffs, and he has a new nasty legendary action. lae'zel is the unfortunate recipient of this, a curse that he uses once per turn as a counterattack. The curse gives a countdown, and when it expires, it deals 20 d10 force damage to the victim. Fortunately, lae'zel sticks stun in the process, so that should make things a lot easier. As mentioned, Jaheira basically can't damage Gortash at all, so she goes around targeting adds and making short work of them. Damage is primarily in the hands of Shadowheart and lae'zel. After he loses his shell, they start dealing double damage to him. Karlach also does an okay hit with Ice Storm. He's getting pretty close to dead at this point, honestly. After lae'zel drops him to critical levels, an Air Myrmidon finishes the job and the battle is won. Karlach picks up his Netherstone and has her big inner monologue as a cap-off to her personal story. lae'zel got knocked out of wild shape by the effects of her curse, so she had the opportunity to participate in the cutscene as well. Not a whole lot about this cutscene changes, despite Karlach being the player character. She is still broken and depressed by her imminent death. Despite getting what she wanted, it is a bittersweet ending for her either way. Well, after spending about 30 minutes in photo mode getting the thumbnail for this video, now it is time for the other half of the main story. Orin, and more specifically, the murder tribunal which awaits in the lower city. Karlach and crew head straight to the place, under the tombstone shop near the graveyard. Thanks to Gortash's hand, and I guess the bag of hands she received from Dolor, she gets past the first set of guards without a fight. And then she sees who is the head of the murder tribunal of Bhaal, none other than Sarevok himself, the final boss of BG1. And in case you're wondering, yes, Jaheira has a unique interaction here thanks to her being involved in foiling his plot 100 years ago. While I personally didn't take this option, you can apparently sacrifice her and Minsc to Baal to become the unholy assassin. But obviously, good-aligned Karlach isn't going to do that, so instead she offers Jaheira the chance to fight Sarevok again, and they go to battle. This is also a pretty tough boss in terms of raw stats. This guy can take some punishment, and he hits really, really hard. He also has some rather annoying backup, and worse, when they are killed, they give permanent buffs to Sarevok himself. Karlach once again opens with Black Hole, in case anybody thought otherwise, and then drops the ice. To bait out the counterspell and allow Karlach to do what she wants, lae'zel gets close and uses Misty Step. Silly girl, why would you waste your only counterspell on that when this is a party of full casters? Any blue player knows you only use your untapped mana to counter the most impactful thing your opponent does. Sendai is the first ad to go down after Shadowheart kills her, which gives Sarevok a +6 to AC. Next is Ilisera, and a funny thing happens, presumably because Sarevok is prone at the time. He doesn't get to absorb her essence. I'm pretty sure he gets permanent haste under normal circumstances though he would never get the chance to use it because Jaheira wild shapes and immediately finishes him off on her next turn. I guess it is poetic justice that Jaheira is the one to get the finishing blow here. The last ad is no threat. In fact, it dies to the combination of running through an active moonbeam and getting hit with psionic backlash. Then there is a nice bit of looting, which includes giving Sarevok's fantastic helmet to lae'zel, and then a shiny little elephant is freed from some shackles next door. Hope you're grateful, quite possibly the most insufferable NPC in the whole game. Map to the Temple of Baal and Amulet of Baal in hand, it's next stop Orin and getting the last Netherstone. So the team teleports down to the Undercity and opens the door, revealing a large chasm area. There is one trash encounter on the way through this dungeon, which under normal circumstances is a timed encounter. The red glowing ghost assassin will cast Power Word Kill, and if it goes off, you get game over. But he never got the chance to even use it this time, probably due to being stunned by air myrmidons. The next area is just a cinematic walk up to the temple, and Jaheira has some things to say at the gate about how familiar this feels. Orin awaits inside the temple with her victim Yenna on an altar in the middle of the arena. At first, Orin seems pleased that we did what we were told and killed Gortash first, bringing the stones to her. However, then she gets mad because we chose to murder Sarevok. You win some, you lose some. Karlach still succeeds her intimidation check to prevent her from immediately killing Yenna, and Orin initiates battle by transforming into the Slayer. Here we have yet another potential run killer boss, which is part of why I saved it for last. This fight has a lot of annoying things that make it tough. Probably the biggest factor is the group of chanting losers who surround the arena. Each of them has Sanctuary permanently, and if even one of them is alive at the end of the turn, then Orin gets 12 stacks of Untouchable, and someone gets afflicted with a curse from Baal. That means killing those dudes is actually much more important than it seems, because removing them from the equation removes much of what makes Orin a threat. Not all, of course. The Slayer form is strong in its own right. It does a ton of damage with attacks and has a very nasty counterattack. I learned this the hard way, when Shadowheart gets flung off the ledge to her death by just being in the blast radius of a counter. The chanting dudes are taken down mostly with AoE spells like the typical ice stuff Karlach has. lae'zel also does some serious work here using Thunder Wave to launch them into the pit. She kills several in this manner. Meanwhile, the summons and wild-shaped Shadowheart and Jaheira are whittling down Orin's untouchable stacks. Getting through 12 takes a lot of hits. There are some other ballist assassins around, but they do next to nothing to influence this battle. Most of them fail their saves or miss their attacks. Unlike the other bosses so far in Act 3, Orin here is never stun-locked, so she always had at least the chance to take someone out. But fortunately, she never does quite enough damage to kill, and once I learned how to position to avoid getting knocked off the edge, it wasn't so dangerous to get hit with her counter either. Until Jaheira removes the last of her unstoppable stacks and gets the full force of her attacks in, Orin sits at pretty high HP levels, but then she drops pretty quickly and goes down the next turn. Is what I would like to say. In reality, she survived with 10 HP. What a joke. Her next turn is pretty well wasted, so everybody gets one more chance to finish the battle, and this time an Air Myrmidon gets it done. Orin turns to gore on the floor and leaves behind her loot, which includes the Netherstone. Her armor would honestly not be bad either since it works with Wild Shape, but so close to the end of the game I just don't care anymore. The Emperor shows up to explain where the brain is hiding, a morphic pool in the Undercity. Pretty near this temple, in fact. Another reason to save Orin for last. The point of no return is right up the road from her battle. Oh, by the way, Yenna survived. Yay! I would encourage most people to actually take a long rest here, despite getting a free one right before the Upper City battle. Reason being, that free long rest doesn't actually restore your short rests or long rest cooldown actions. This bites me a little bit, mostly because I don't get my free casts from Marco Heshkir or the Illithid power, but oh well. I just go straight from the Temple of Baal to the Morphic Pool and take off for the end of the game. This train is rolling and there's no stopping it now. After killing some brain cats in the caves, Karlach finally reaches the Netherbrain and fails all her checks in trying to control it with the stones. I even re-rolled the DC 99 check with advantage using all 4 points of inspiration. Didn't get it this time. Bummer. The Emperor shows up to rescue everybody and drag them into the Astral Prism, and the brain floats off to start the siege of the city. Man, thanks for the save, bro, but I've got some real bad news for you. Orpheus is definitely getting freed. No takesies backsies. The Emperor decides this is a good time to undo all his hard work over the course of the game and side with the evil brain. A completely logical character move, obviously. But whatever, man, lae'zel would literally kill me if I didn't free Orpheus. Once Orpheus is out of his chains, he gives the usual angry spiel, then calms down and joins up. And the choice is given. Who becomes a Mind Flayer? I knew it had to be Karlach, as she usually jumps at the chance in a normal run anyway. She does not have any special lines indicating her desire to become a Mind Flayer, but fittingly, she does have some unique lines upon completing the transformation, talking about how she finally gets the chance to live. After leaving the prism with Orpheus, the city is looking pretty rough. Githyanki dragon riders battling Nautiloids and everything burning down. Up the stairs, Voss shows up to greet his prince and becomes the last NPC to pledge his cause to my battle. In the next room, all that effort comes to fruition, a room full of allies all willing to help out. When asked to do a speech, I was pleased to see a unique option to let Jaheira do it instead, something I had never seen before since I don't tend to use Jaheira in my party. Very cool. After summoning and buffing and shopping, everybody sets out for the final battle. A lot of people skip this fight, and I get it. If you've beaten this game 50 times, this fight is just an annoying obstacle to the final boss. But I see it more as a victory lap and a chance to show off your complete level 12 build and the best gear in the game. So I fought everything, full Myrmidon party and summons for days. It took close to 30 minutes all up to clear the courtyard. Could be worse, honestly. The next section I also killed everything in my path, but the number of enemies here is very few. After flying up to the top of the path, I used the long rest potions on the whole party to make sure they had max spell slots ready to go. And then, Karlach climbs the brain. Funnily enough, the whole party is automatically removed from Wild Shape just for this climbing scene. At the top, a dragon and the Emperor show up to act as one last set of obstacles to the final boss. Again, I was determined to beat these guys to prove just how powerful the party has become. It should come as no surprise that the Red Dragon is by far the most dangerous threat on the brain. It has 500 HP and a legendary action and level 17 stats. Karlach went in first as a Fire Myrmidon and ate the legendary action since it deals fire damage, so that was a freebie. Then, one last black hole to control this big group of foes. With everybody focusing down the dragon, it took about 2 turns to whittle down 500 HP. In the meantime, the Emperor and his lackeys were easy prey with all the AoE spells flying around. One rather stupid mistake I made was not realizing the legendary Fire Breath counterattack from the dragon is not a cone, it is a straight up AoE, so all my Myrmidon allies got dropped to critical HP and set on fire. But the dragon was still very effectively wiped out during the course of that turn. With the dragon down, the Emperor and the Dream Guardians were cleaned up, and finally, attention was focused on the Mind Flayers on the ledge. These guys are pretty annoying with their magic missile spam, Mind Blast, and Counterspell, but Air Myrmidon summons helped keep them under control. After all the Mind Flayers were dead, Karlach channels the Chains of Karsus, and all the major players go inside the newly formed portal to confront the brain. And this is where the biggest advantage of having a full party of all the same class and subclass comes into play. The Netherbrain has an effect that gives it full immunity to any type of damage it took on a given turn on the next turn. With a max of 5 turns to kill it and deal 450 damage, this can be a problem if you have limited damage types. But with 4 characters all running a similar build, you can alternate damage types and keep DPS high. So turn 1 was Ice, and everybody dropped their biggest Ice Blast on the brain. Once the party was fully assembled, it was about half dead. Orpheus used Globe of Invulnerability to protect for just 1 turn, and then the whole party switched to Lightning. I stupidly forgot Water on the first turn, but remembered it on the second, which made all those cold lightning casts deal double damage. After all 4 druids got their turn and used Call Lightning twice with a haste potion on a wet target, the brain was dead and the battle won. And thus ends the Druids Only run of BG3 on Honor Mode. Karlach chooses to destroy the brain and all the tadpoles, and she has some unique dialogue in the ending as a mind flayer regarding her ability to finally have a real life. She convinces Shadowheart to stay with her despite some trepidation about being in the company of a mind flayer. And the narrator incorrectly states that they have spent the last 6 months fighting the blood war in the Hells. Whoopsie. Maybe they didn't account for Karlach choosing to be a mind flayer and also having a romantic companion, or just a bug, who knows. I'll be real, I was fully expecting the infamous scene in the epilogue where a mind flayer avatar fails a con save and tries to eat someone's brain, and I thought it would be a hilarious ending for the series for that to happen and Karlach to have to battle all her companions. But I never got the check. It just didn't happen, and I talked to everybody and exhausted all their dialogue. Oh well, happy ending it is then. Thanks for watching through this whole series. I know it went a bit longer than most creators do with their BG3 content. I don't know if more detail was a good thing or a bad thing really, but I wanted to mention all the cool things that happened. This was a really fun run to play and experience, and so many fun interactions came about as a result of being druids or in wild shape. Plus, so many battles were very entertaining as a result of either all wild shapes or having access to tons of magic. Druids really are quite the powerful class, and despite only using one subclass, there was a surprising amount of variety. I was especially impressed with how different each Myrmidon felt in battle. Karlach having haste meant she could get around and hit many more targets than anyone else. Shadowheart could make targets weak to ice, synergizing with any ice mages in the party, and increasing her own damage. Obviously, lae'zel carried a lot of fights with her infinite stun powers. And Jaheira. Good God, she packed a punch. Everybody was useful, and it was totally fun to play. This game really just keeps finding ways to be entertaining, even after having spent hundreds of hours exploring every nook and cranny. I would love to make another BG3 series in the future, and I'm taking any ideas you might have, so drop a comment. Even mods are on the table, since there are so many cool modded classes and subclasses available on console, and a surprising lack of videos about them. I only used UI-related mods for this run. It was otherwise a vanilla experience. Anyway, enough rambling. I appreciate everybody who stuck through this series, and I hope you found it entertaining. My biggest goal is that you found inspiration to play through BG3 again for yourself, since this game has so much to offer. Go out there and start a new run and share your stories with the world. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.